Welcome, everyone, to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast. I'm a networking expert and the author of the upcoming book, No Strangers, How to Build Community, One Relationship at a Time. My why is the pursuit of mastery, and the goal of this podcast is to lock arms on a lifelong mission of daily personal growth to become the best version of ourselves. So let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. We are joined by a very special guest. He is the singer for some incredible bands, including the Salads and the Reverbists, and some cover bands. So the Power of Huey and Mob Barley and the Jailers. So welcome to the podcast, Mr. Darren Dumas. Darren, how are you? What's life like in Stratford, Ontario? And even though people joke about Canadians living in igloos and all this stuff, rumor has it you actually just built an igloo for your kids. Can you talk to me about this?
Hey, Joel. Thanks so much for having me on the show, man. I appreciate the invite. And the igloo. Yeah. Wow. It's just a new endeavor as everybody seems to be diving into new things during this pandemic. And it's extra cold now. And I happened to see a video of some other local folks building an ice igloo, and had me scratching my head and watching a couple of YouTube videos. I'm like, that's pretty easy, something to do in the spare time. My daughter would lose her marbles over it and have a lot of fun, and kids in the neighborhood would come and play and whatever. And that's what I did. I built an ice igloo. They're not hard to do. And in our temperatures, it really only took, and in the time I had, really only took me about a week and a half. I only had so many containers to make ice blocks out of, and you got to wait a couple of days for them all to freeze. And then time and sunlight after work was slim, but we made it happen. And now it's starting to melt, and it's looking pretty skeletal, and we're just, still having fun with it, and it's something to do. I hate the winter, and I was born in Canada, born and raised. I feel like as I get older, every year is more and more painful, but I'm trying to flip the script and find some light in there and find some love for the snow. And this was a really fun project. Yeah.
You're going to be one of those, snowbirds that go to Florida every winter as they get older. Normally I'm in Mexico, but the pandemic has kept me here. I'm the same. I like snowboarding and I like hockey, and that's about it in the winters.
There you go. Yeah. That's kind of how it goes for a lot of Canadians. And as you get older, the body feels it a little bit more, but if you can find some good things in it, that's what it is. Igloos are kind of, they can get warm. And at nighttime, what I did, I put some thinner pieces of ice in the top. You can still see the glow of the moon and just sitting inside of it, even though I live in a suburb and there's a lot of other houses around us and a lot of kids. By nighttime, most of them are asleep, and the silence inside the igloo is really awesome.
It's a good meditation spot if you're into that. If you can handle the cold. See, you saw people making igloos and you thought, oh, that's easy, I can do that. I'm thinking, man, that looks tough. How do you keep the top on? How does that work?
I wondered the same thing, and I was worried about that a little bit. So I did do the top pieces a little bit thinner than the sides. But yeah, just going to the dollar store and getting some, 10-inch by 13-inch tin baking trays for $1 a piece. I got a dozen of them. Fill them up as much as you can. They're, at an inch and a half thick or so. If you fill them a little thinner, the tins themselves have a bit of an angle on them. So if you just keep putting them together like that, it starts to curve inside for the roof. Otherwise, you do them the other way, so they keep going straight up for the walls. And that slush, working the slush together as mortar is it's amazing at the right temperature. It just freezes immediately, and the whole thing's ice, and you're happening. It's easier than you think, really. It's crazy.
So if all else fails, if this interview, this conversation crash and burns, at least everyone in Canada now knows how to make an igloo. So there's a to do that we started off.
Yeah, they're like, great. He taught us how to make an igloo, and we can tune out now.
That's awesome. Give the people what they want right off the top. What was your kids' response to this igloo? I mean, they were helping you, right? It wasn't like they showed up and it was done.
Yeah. Wow. So I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son, a good gap between them. There's a teenager in the house and a very influential kindergartner. And she, I shouldn't say very influential, very easily influenced by her teenage brother. But she was still more, she's also my more creative of the two. And she was more hands-on than he was. He's kind of like, do I have to come out? I made him come out a few times to help me with some of the ones I needed someone to hold on to for a minute to get all fixed on. But it's more for her physical height. The thing was like a grand castle. It's like this, it's Elsa's castle, right? And she's right into that. So it's just the smaller we are, the more larger than life things are. So for her, it was a bit more epic than it was for him. Although when he helped me finish it, he was pushing through and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I can finish the rest by myself. He's like, no, I want to help you finish the last bunch of pieces so I can see it finished. So then he got stoked about it, and everybody was right into it. Even my mom and other neighbors, like I said, were coming over to check it out and taking pictures. And that's fun. It's a fun project. Something to do.
Your son sounds like me at 14, not wanting to be a part of anything. And when you said, your daughter with her size, when she looks up, it looks massive, like a real castle. Like every size is relative, right? And it reminded me, they just released the first of 3 parts of a new Kanye West documentary. So it's called Genius, but like spelled more like,
I watched it the other day.
Okay. So it reminded me of a scene where he's with his mom, Donda, and he's starting to have success. And she basically, in a way of telling him to stay humble, like be confident, but stay humble. She says, when a giant looks in a mirror, he doesn't see a giant. Like a giant just sees, to a giant is normal. And that's what she's saying. Like you can be a giant, but when you look in the mirror, just see yourself, don't see that giant. So that's what your comment about your daughter and the size just clicked for me.
Yeah, man. And I thought that one struck a chord with me too, watching that same episode. I've always really took that to heart because I've always been a huge fan of music such as yourself. And I admired that in other musicians. I really admired the people that I looked up to, that the few that I did get to meet that were as humble as could be are still to this day some of my biggest influences, and probably that had a huge part to do with it. And I always found I loved it just as much as fans loved it, that I would get off the stage most of the time with, as far as salad stuff would go, in some of our bigger events and bigger concerts, and get right into the crowd and wander crowds. And I would hear people at certain points of the peak of our career, what's that guy doing? What's he wandering around? Oh, it's that guy in the salads. And you're just a normal, I just feel like a person. I want to be part of that crowd just the same. Now I'm getting a update here. Some weird thing. Sorry. And so I relate to that, and the band has always said, and even if you've seen our DVD that we put out, Band Gone Wild, around 2004 or around there, the guys all mentioned how there's a lot of parts of our history where they felt like I was more of a part of the audience than I was in the band when performing on stage, because I want to share that experience and I want the audience to feel as much of what we're feeling, because I'm doing what I'm doing and feeling the way I'm feeling, a large part due to them being there, and the music and camaraderie and all that together just creates this tornado of what you've seen and what people have seen on stage by the Salads. So that's important. That's an important thing, staying grounded, and we're all human, no matter what TV channel you're on, what book page you've been in, or whatever. People, I think that's, especially these days, is quickly forgotten. We all jump to what kind of people we are, what religion we are, what political party we support, what color our skin is, all that stuff. And we forget that we have all got blood running through our veins and we're people. That's important, man. That's one of the most important things in life, I think. Being humble. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't see the giant in the mirror.
Absolutely. One of the biggest bands I worked with, that if anyone had a right to have an ego, was this band. So this was Rush. I was able to work with Rush back in the day on a charity event. So we raised about $140,000 in one day for charity with Rush. And what's crazy is, outside of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, there's no band on the planet that has more gold, platinum, and multi-platinum albums than Rush. Like, they just, they're not selling 10 million copies of an album like some bands, but across their entire discography, it's like every album basically has gone gold or platinum or multi-platinum. So this, I don't know if it's because they're Canadian is why they're so nice despite all that success. But when I worked with them, they showed up at this event. They walked right by all the people that they knew. It's like they knew those guys were already good. And they walked right up to the people that were helping the event. And, hey, thank you so much for helping. We couldn't have done this without you. Food is over there if you need anything. And when they knew that everyone that was helping them was good, they went and hung out with their friends afterwards. And I have a handwritten custom Rush letter on my fridge. After them just doing that, thanking me was enough. They sent me a handwritten letter again saying, this is all the good that we did. We couldn't have done it without you, signed by the band. And to this day, like that's made a huge impression on me. And you would think someone like Rush, you'd be like, oh yeah, I mean, it's okay, Rush didn't talk to me. It's Rush. But so that's my biggest example of a massive band that still gives the fans what they want,
That's solid, man. Right. And see, and that struck a chord with you, and still to this day, and you'll still be telling that story till the day you die, probably. That's huge to me. That's the kind of stuff that is life-changing and so heavily influential to people that we need more of that. Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. I'm not a huge Rush fan, but I, as far as their music goes, but fully respect their position in music and history and Canadian history at that. But my closer connection is my mom went to high school with Neil Peart.
No way.
Actually, just on the other side of this wall, I've got a stack of her yearbooks with photos of him as a kid in them. And I remember finding that out and realizing that in high school and making a little collage on the photocopier to bring in.
Did she know? Or you just happened to?
Oh yeah, she knew. She
Okay.
told me about it. She was like, they didn't hang out or anything. She was a cheerleader. He was, the pot smoking hippie at the back of her math class with his pencils on the desk. That was their relationship. She looking back, she's like, I, wish I had, chatted with him more, hung out, would pick his brain or whatever, but they weren't part of the same world, just the same math class in the same high school.
I'd assume as a cheerleader, she's more, with the jocks and the sports people, and he's more with the nerds and the hippies and the musicians.
That's what it was, man. Yeah, my birth father eventually was a football guy. So that's how my mom and him connected. But just growing up in St. Catharines and going to that high school, Neil Peart happened to be in the math class and others and whatever. But it's funny seeing these high school yearbook pictures.
one of the greatest drummers of all time. Every few months there's a new list from Drummer Magazine, from Rolling Stone, greatest drummers of all time, and Neil Peart's always top 3.
Always in there.
I finally saw Rush live. It was on their tour. They had a new album, something about clockwork, something.
Right.
And man, the noise that just three people can make, it sounds like they're a 12-piece band. And I mean, it helps that each member is playing like three instruments, but
Yeah.
it's unbelievable.
Actually, there was another time where the Salads were doing an interview in Toronto at Cherry Beach Sound Studios. We rehearsed in the same space, but did an interview in their studio at one point in time. And Rush was rehearsing in there for some shows or something coming up. They happened to be out on a lunch break while we were doing the interview in the studio, but Neil Peart's drum set was all set up in the studio and
looked like a spaceship.
Yeah, we were admiring it and just checking everything out, especially our drummer, of course. But what I thought was really cool and what still sticks in my head was just that it was all set up and packed in this like wooden box with proper holes and hinges on it so that the box could just be unhinged and all the walls drop and it's still set up exactly as it is in the studio. And then they just put the walls back up, leave it set up and rehinge it. And everything was all set in place so that this whole box could just be moved, the full kit set up because it was so intricate. That was a trip to see too. I remember that.
Someone should give that drum tech a raise, or at least the assistant engineer, whoever's working that kit. Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah. I can't imagine how many techs he would have had with him touring and whatnot, but
I bet his drum tech is probably like an incredible drummer. Like you'd have to be to understand what's going on,
Right. Yeah, exactly. I would imagine so too.
I guess that's like a lot of bands when their guitarist leaves the band or quits. A lot of times it's the guitar tech that replaces them because they know the equipment inside out. They know the songs inside out, and they're usually insanely talented guitarists or musicians, whatever the instrument is.
Yeah, exactly. So long as some other more familiar face doesn't come along and
and if Dave Navarro shows up, then he's probably got it right.
There you go. Exactly. The Chili Peppers tech didn't get that gig.
But actually, the redemption of this story is so they're about to release a new album, and they have John Frusciante back, which is awesome. Right. But the album before that was their guitar tech, was the guitarist. So
yeah. Oh, there you go. I you know what, to be honest, one of my favorite bands growing up, hugely influential, but after Californication, they lost me.
What about Stadium Arcadium? That was a solid one. Then there was a few after that.
There might have been some jams in it, but I think it was too poppy for me. Yeah. I've always said I'd love to see them go back to George Clinton and do a record with him again. And see some freaky styley.
What album was that? Like Mother's Milk or earlier than that?
Earlier than that. Yeah. George Clinton produced one, if not two records for them. Freaky Styley, I think. The real colorful, wild, crazy ones. But I just listened to an interview that he did recently with Questlove of The Roots, who's got a great podcast called Questlove Supreme too. And did a long interview with George Clinton and ended up talking a little bit about Chili Peppers, which you don't hear him talk about much these days. But he was just like, the record, I think it's Freaky Style, is predominantly George Clinton and P-Funk riffs, but done in a punk kind of style, where he was there to bring the funk for them. They were taking that influence, but making it sound dirty and punk, which he didn't understand. So, and that just created that punk funk thing that the Chili Peppers were doing that they eventually cleaned up during Blood Sugar Sex Magic and so on, and then really mellowed out and popped out in like almost a new age style, just the way I see it up until now, more modern like that. But yeah, it was dirty punk funk stuff, and he was very involved in their early inception, first few records kind of stuff.
So I have a random observation that hopefully this makes sense to you, and it ties in with the Salads, and it ties in with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and it ties in with you as a vocalist. So bear with me with this. Okay.
Yeah.
So I went back and listened to the entire Salads discography, and I had done that a few months ago when Chuck was on, who was the bass player for the Salads, and I had made an observation that, to me, the first album, Meanwhile, which wasn't you singing on that one, to me it felt very Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I compared it to, say, Mother's Milk. Okay, and then you have Fold A to B, which was like the big breakout album with hit singles, all that stuff. And to me, that felt like the Chili Peppers moving from Mother's Milk to Blood, Sex, Sugar, Magic, where Anthony Kiedis changes from the more hip hoppy one word after another kind of speaking, shouting style into, he really developed his vocals. And it's like that new vocal captured a way bigger audience and propelled them with that album. And I felt like that's what you brought to that album. Does that comparison make any sense to anyone but me?
It makes more sense to me than you probably realize, because you asked me if it if it did. And to a lot of people will probably totally get that. So that first record, I wasn't even a part of Meanwhile, of the Salads. I was a fan of, and I was just being introduced to the guys. And little did I know at that time, we were drawing from the same influences. We all grew up listening to the like different stuff, because I'm the youngest guy in the band. They're all about 5 years older than me. So slightly, still the same eras of music are influencing us, but where the beginning of one party is of an era is influencing one, the end of the era is influencing the other. So while there were some differences, the core of our influences were exactly what you mentioned. It was early Chili Peppers, it was early Faith No More, it was early Fishbone, a lot of funk, hip hop, punk, metal, rock, grunge, alternative, whatever you want to call it, but heavy, funky, rapping but singing stuff, groovy, rap rock, whatever, all those things mashed up together. And then where I think the Salads had a bit of difference in all that, our extra kind of influences came from the guys in the band also being heavy into glam rock, and the Motley Crue, the Van Halens, the Poison, all that kind of a flashy stuff. And me, I added a bit more, I would say, reggae and punk stuff that they didn't listen to as much, and hip hop, a lot of hip hop. We all liked all the mainstream stuff. But I was a bit deeper in my love for that, which shone through, I guess, a bit with Fold A to B vocally. But you know what's funny? The vocals on the Meanwhile album were an afterthought. They did the whole record instrumentally, and then like, oh yeah, vocals. That's why they're kind of all over the place. That's why they all took turns on vocals. That's why the lyrics are kind of.
Wait, so was there
meaningless,
another singer, or it was just
they all took turns
Chuck
on
and
vocals.
Dave and everyone's? Mm-hmm. So there was no other singer.
Everybody took vocals. There was no lead singer before me. Yeah. The rap stuff Dave is doing mostly. Our previous bass player who left the band before I joined, who was unreal on bass, was Dave Sommerfeld. He did some of the more singing stuff. I think Chuck did some of the stuff that's like this. I forget which, like Stinky.
That's an early song on the album.
Stinky Bitch. Yeah.
That has some amazing guitar and bass.
If you don't know the songs, that title alone gives you an example of kind of how goofy all the lyrical content was. And it was an afterthought. It was all just sort of, what would go on here? Well, let's rap on this one about how I'm cool and funky.
Yeah. See, I wasn't aware of all this. So as a fan all these years in preparation, I was actually going to ask about your vocals from Meanwhile and then Fold A to B,
Yeah.
that, one was more rap and then one, has more soul and way stronger vocals and more singing. And I was going to ask what accounts for that massive growth in those 5 years to your vocals. And it turns out that it's actually a completely different person. So,
Well, so between Meanwhile and Full Day to Be, we released a small run of an EP called Who's That? It's not streamable or anything. There might be some stuff on YouTube. We're going to fix that, I think, eventually. I'm not in a rush to get it out there per se, because there's even a difference you could probably recognize between that and Full Day to Be. And that was the first stuff with me, or Who's That EP, where I was influenced. It was I think a perfect crossover. It's a real good median between the vocals on Meanwhile and Full Day to Be. A little bit goofier than most of the content on Full Day to Be. I was a new vocalist as well too. Like, oh, I'm going to try to do this thing, see what I can do and have fun with it. And by Full Day to Be, it was like, all right, we're going to get a bit more serious. I started taking vocal lessons. We were going to start touring, all that kind of stuff. There's more gigs happening. I think you even hear a difference in my own style from that EP to that full length.
So I'm big into networking and building communities, and so I like to share for our listeners. I like to share how I know the guests, which shows like the power of networking. So
yeah, I love that.
I have a couple stories that you will not, you know nothing about these stories, so I'm excited to share with you. But way back in the day when I was a teenager, I did a road trip from Ottawa to Toronto for Canadian Music Week. And I waited in line for hours at a Future Shop to get autographs from you and your band. So there is a picture. I have a picture somewhere of me, super not aged to drink yet for sure. And I'm there with you guys, and I got a picture and some autographs. So that's the very start of the Salads. That was around when Get Loose and the Roth Kung Fu were big hits. It's around that period of time. And then we fast forward a few years. I'm in Montreal for a Radiohead concert. So there's 60,000 people to see one band. Like, it's not a festival. It's crazy. And I was there with a bunch of friends, and we were going from bar to bar, getting a few drinks. And at one point I just look outside and I go to my friends. I'm like, is that the Salads? And I ran outside, and you guys were there. And I think I talked to Chuck more than anyone else. And I wouldn't expect anyone to remember this because I barely remember it. And and it was the Salads. And you guys weren't there for Radiohead. You guys were actually on tour. And Chuck and I
stopped us to say hello.
Yeah, Chuck and I were trying to figure out recently, what tour or what show. And he talked about Montreal had a good ska scene, and you were probably playing this venue or with this band or whatever. So those are kind of two early Salads memories for me. And what ties us here today is I reached out to Chuck a few months ago and asked him to be a guest on the podcast. And he, it's crazy. He's now the bass player for I Mother Earth. So he came on and we talked, and then that made me go through the whole discography again. And then I remember they had this awesome singer that, had great vocals and a ton of energy live and infectious and all these things. And then it turns out that we were already friends on Facebook, but you got 5,000 friends on Facebook and you can point them out in a crowd, but we've never talked before. So I thought I would reach out to you as a fan of your music and your work and see if this is something you might be interesed in. So
hey, well, man,
we get here today.
That's so crazy. So thank you for telling me those stories. That's amazing. I love hearing all that stuff. Again, because if I've not heard it before, it's fantastic. Even if I have, it's a good refresher of the memory. Sometimes I forget stories, and I love opportunities like this. And strange how the world works, but not too long ago, I was just thinking about how it's been a while since I've done a really in-depth kind of an interview such as this, and a little bit longer, to really capture this kind of stuff. And just historically, I love that sort of thing. And help. And I find the more we tell these stories and our memory is jogged of certain times, the more we're gonna remember them just by telling them. That less chance of them being lost in space and whatnot. And that's unfortunate for everybody. But yeah, no, that's crazy. I remember that Future Stop thing because that was a big deal. There were a lot of other Canadian bands there.
Yeah, so there was,
It
I've
was
gone
pretty
through
nutty.
this a few times because I had Chuck on, so I shared the story,
It was
and
like
then
Fifth Naked
I had the
and
Mudmen on who were there, so I shared the story with the Mudmen.
So I'm going to interrupt you and do
Go
a
ahead.
little bit of a jump bridge gap thing there because we toured with the Mudmen and know those guys. That's how I originally met Lonnie Knapp, who was playing guitar for them. He is one of the three guys in the Reverbists, and also plays guitar in the Power of Huey as well now too. But he's been long gone from the Mudmen.
You just reminded me that you were kind enough to submit a quote that I read to them on the Mudmen episode. I forgot about that. It's funny how fast we forget things. You know?
What did I forget what I asked you to ask them, but I would have if I had really dug into it.
So you had
embarrass
said,
them.
yeah, no, you had just said, some kind words, and then thank you for the introduction to him because you're now in a few bands together.
Yes. Of course, that's exactly what it was. Yeah. Fun guys, funny guys. Lonnie always would crack up a room and just be a funny guy to be around, and has grown to be an incredible talent. And I'm proud to be in the Reverbists with him. Just that's a really fun project. But yeah, Montreal, man, we played in Montreal a number of times. I think it's often with a lot of Stomp Records bands because again, the ska, like Chuck had mentioned, ska stuff is and the scene is really strong in Montreal, is and was. And Fishbone, we played with them there a lot. Cafe Campus, number of places. I always loved playing Montreal. Just yeah, great scene, great people, and that love of ska was a bit stronger there. So not that we were a ska band, but the influence was obvious. Yeah.
Man, the more we talk, it's like all these dots that are connecting, and it's like I don't even want to touch on the questions I have because we can just weave through these narratives. So on what you just talked about, so I was in the GTA for 11 years. During the pandemic, I sold my home and I moved back to my hometown of Ottawa. So I'm in Ottawa now. And what that means is if ever bands, big bands are touring Canada, they usually skip Ottawa and I go to Montreal to see them. So I have tickets. I'm going to Montreal to see Dream Theater, which is going to be
crazy.
So the first live show I'm going to see after 2 years is Dream Theater. Like my mind's going to explode or something. The musicianship, it's like you forget that humans that are capable of doing that. And then I had tickets for last year to see Megadeth, and they rescheduled during the pandemic. They just announced the date. So now I have a date in Montreal with Megadeth, and it's a huge card with Hatebreed, with Trivium.
Fun.
It's huge. So I'll be going to Montreal. And then you just talked about Fishbone, and we've been talking about Red Hot Chili Peppers. So back in the day, there's basically one time when I was about 14 that my dad and I were not getting along, and he when he realized that things weren't going well, his way to make amends, this is what he did. This is a good dad. He got tickets for us to road trip from Ottawa to New York, somewhere in New York State. And it was to see Fishbone. This is my dad. Like, I don't know how my dad knows this stuff. Fishbone opening for Stone Temple Pilots, opening for Red Hot Chili Peppers. So it was just, him and I weren't getting along, and it's him and I in a car having to work this out on a road trip. And he set it up that we were camping during that. So we had set up a tent together, and it's raining, and it's just us, and we're talking. And then we got our brains melted with the rock radiation from those three bands. And the Stone Temple Pilots were super loud. And then in the changeover between them and the Chili Peppers, you see a new set of like speakers dropping down, and my dad's going, "Oh my God, it's about to get louder." And anyways, we figured everything out, and that was and you know, everything's been good since then. And that's kind of a moment that sticks out, and it ties the Fishbone with the Chili Peppers. So
do you recall seeing Fishbone for
I
that show?
do.
Did you catch it? Yeah.
Yeah, so
That-
I didn't know a single song. I just knew that
yeah,
they were
yeah,
these legends of funk and ska, and they were
yeah.
amazing. And I was, I guess, a SDP and a Chili Peppers fan at that point.
Yeah, totally. I saw the Toronto date of that same tour because I vividly remember that, and just being brothers of the Fishbone guys and so tight with them. That was a big tour for them too. It was a big roller coaster for them, to be honest. As you mentioned, most people knew, I think, that Fishbone are like the godfathers from these guys. I mean, the godfathers in the sense that they're older. They're the same age bracket and same age group, and grew up in the same scene in LA as the Chili Peppers, but they were competing against each other, and Fishbone always kind of just had the upper hand. But popularity wise and success wise, obviously the Chili Peppers had the upper hand. So then thankfully could take them on tour instead of just pushing them aside and being like, "Meh, meh." But Fishbone fought their balls off every night of that tour. I felt so bad. I didn't know the guys at the time just yet at that show, but I felt so bad for them because I rushed there to get to the Molson Amphitheater to see Fishbone play before STP and Chili Peppers went on. And people were still coming in and filling in the seats. There was next to nobody in that theater, in the massive amphitheater. And Angelo got off the stage and was climbing over people's shoulders into the crowd, their lead singer, and right in their faces. And there's video footage that, if you know him personally, I mean, you can see it. Even not knowing him, you see it a little bit. He had a little bit of "fuck you" in his tone that day. While it was just like, "We are Fishbone" is always the presentation on stage, there was a bit of "We are motherfucking Fishbone, and you better pay attention today. I'm in your motherfucking face." Like it was that kind of energy that I could tell from Angelo. He was a little bit on the angry side.
Did that add to the show to make it better, or did it take away from it?
I suppose that's to one's own perception.
Yeah.
It added to it. For me, it did make me a tiny bit uncomfortable. But again, I think it's because at some points, but again, I think it's partially due to knowing them so deeply and having some really close, being so fortunate to have some really close moments, writing songs together, backstage together. You know, when we first toured with Fishbone for a few weeks across Canada, I had this one moment with Angelo. I want to say it was in Hamilton, but I'm not 100% sure. Where we just got off stage. They were about to go on stage. He and I are the only two in the bathroom downstairs changing, and he's just kind of not having a good day. And he's like, "Man, I don't know how long I can keep doing this shit." And for me to hear one of my heroes say that to me, that was just making my world right at that time on that tour, I was just heartbroken and like, what can I say to make him not do that without seeing like I'm begging or whatever, and not understanding the position he's coming from and the history he's already laid down while we're still fresh at it. But I was just like, "Man, I hear what you're saying, but if there's anything I can possibly say as a massive fan and friend, like, holy cow, please keep going." Please don't stop. And look at where we are now today. That was 2002, 20 years later, and they're still going hella strong, way stronger than the Salads, and and still flying under the radar as far as how, you know, the history. I've said it, I've said it a couple times before because I don't like saying it often, but I strongly feel like it's going to take either Angelo or Norwood being gone from this world for people to really be like, oh, Fishbone, because those are the two guys that are the real OGs of the band. Mind you, the entire band right now that's performing is entirely the original band, which wasn't the case for when we toured with them and for a few decades. But
you feel they're super underappreciated.
Oh, man. Number one,
so
most unappreciated
for our listeners, if there was just one Fishbone album that they should listen to, do you have a recommendation as hard as a fan if you like?
Yeah, because there's no one record. Just go to the greatest hits. There's a greatest hits that I think Columbia Records put out because they've got the majority of their catalog, called Fishbone 101. It's a double CD. First CD is like a greatest hits. The second CD is a lot of B-sides and other stuff that's just all crazy. That's a good example. It's a good start. But if you really want to dive into their catalog of hits and whatnot. But my favorite really is this record. So after they put out,
it's like you had it ready to go.
I'm not messing around. This album right here was put out on Hollywood Records, a Disney-owned label. It starts off with the Temptations cover featuring the Chili Peppers. It continues with a Sly and the Family Stone cover that features George Clinton, Gwen Stefani, Rick James, and Perry Farrell. Huh? Nobody knows about this record. It is Fishbone are such a crazy band with so many sounds and influences and so many different genres mashed up together. Naturally, all the labels and industry people have always said, put out a record of, you're talented, put out a record of songs that are attainable, catchy, radio friendly, and feature all these massive artists that are bigger than you that you've influenced. This is that record. Nobody knows this record because Hollywood Records didn't do a lick of promotion on it, and it just dropped.
What's the name of the album?
Not until about a year ago has it become available on streaming sites and Spotify and stuff like that. The name is also probably partially at fault to it being a bit of a mystery because it's called Fishbone and the Familyhood Nexperience presents the Psychotic Friends Nutworks. All spelt all funky and
that marketing got fired since then, I think, from his job.
But man, that's my dudes. This is the lineup of guys that we were touring with at that time, which is not the original lineup. Just the three guys in the front are OGs, but the guys in the back, even though they were with the band for over 10 years, not really acknowledged as the original band members that are touring with them now. But that was the lineup that we toured with them with too. And what a crazy record. Whew. That's a desert island one for me for sure.
I'll have to check that one out. So yeah. Fishbone was a big influence for you and your music. How much of an influence was the ska scene from the 90s that blew up? So your Mighty Boss Stones and No Doubt and Rancid and Goldfinger and Sublime. How much influence did they have on you? All those records right there.
This is all the Mighty Boss Stones records I have right. I just pulled out.
Is it them that just announced they were breaking up?
Yeah. Shh.
They had a good run.
Don't make me cry. They have had a good run. I've actually, the Boss Tones, I would say, aside from growing up in a small town and predominantly white community, and no internet back in the day. It's crazy to think that we existed in that time, but it was not that long ago. And our source of music was, for me, it was like magazines, TV. So I was an MTV kid, my Rolling Stone magazine subscription. That's kind of what I got. When Stone Temple Pilots first came to Toronto at the concert hall, Masonic Hall, that then became the headquarters for MTV Canada. I was a teenager. I'm so thankful my mom drove me in the middle of the winter to drop me off there and stand outside in the cold and go see Stone Temple Pilots. And according to my Rolling Stone magazine subscription, I thought that they were bringing the Butthole Surfers as an opening act. I'm like, who the Butthole Surfers? This is a weird band. I better check them out. I better, if I go to the record store and find some songs. So I get familiar with the Butthole Surfers, only to arrive at that venue to see a massive Mighty Mighty Boss Tones bulldog flag on the back of the stage before SCP came on. I'm like, what the fuck is this? The Boss Tones hit the stage. This was on their Don't Know How to Party tour. I didn't know who they were. And like I said, aside from listening to Bob Marley and maybe there was some Chili Peppers, no doubt, Sublime kind of influence happening at that time too. They just changed my world. And I'm like, these guys are my new favorite band. I bought everything that I could get at their merch table and went home. I'm signing up to their mailing list. I've been meaning to write like a bit of a post explaining how deep of an influence they were on me. But I've been trying to dig out my old fan letters from them, handwritten, and little drawings from Dickie Barrett and his autograph and stuff on them and shit that was just like, that was me as a teenage kid. Again, no internet, no other way to connect. We would connect through pen pal letters or whatever, making cassette tapes. And that was the thing, TV, Much Music, MTV, the magazines, and signing up for with fan mail and getting fan mail. And I was a fanboy of Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. So yeah, that was obviously a huge influence in that whole world. That just drove me. And they're big reggae fans. And I mean, wrote a song about Desmond Decker and all kinds of, when those bands mention other bands, that's how you find out about their influences and who you should be checking out. And, and then me moving to Toronto after that, when I first moved to Toronto, I went to George Brown College for 3 years of graphic design. And that steered me there, but also let me immerse myself into the live music scene and the music culture. And soon at the last couple of years of school, I started working at HMV on Yonge Street, the big flagship 333 store. And I was there for 5 years, left just in time because the Salads had already started and we were about to start some big tours and just about to blow up. But the time I spent there was my continuation of music education, and on a huge scale, again, expanding, because for Toronto being the most multicultural city in Canada, I think even the world at that time, just, you can only imagine the music knowledge from staff in there and the diversity of cultures in that one building. I soaked it all in like a sponge, man. I worked down in the basement with all the soul music, reggae music, hip hop, dance stuff, and all kinds of DJs and producers and other musicians that I worked with. We shared so much and learned so much from each other, and that built so much knowledge into me. The dread that was a manager of mine, Billy, so much love to Billy. He's like that. He's probably on a beach somewhere, completely disconnected from all technology. I have no idea how to get a hold of the guy. I've been thinking about him a lot lately. Brought me up on so much old roots, reggae and Jamaica stuff that, again, that's where all these bands were coming from and speaking about. You listen to the lyrics and listen to some deeper cuts on Sublime stuff and Boss Tones and even Bad Brains and all that stuff. That's where they're coming from, and Fishbone especially too. That's where my heart really lies, understanding all of those influences and a strong connection to that music, and that's where they all came from. Boss Tones were the big spark to that flame. Crazy. I was so bummed to hear them finish, but at the same time, I get it. They've been doing it for a long time. They have the right to pull that card. I can't be totally upset that they're saying goodbye, and I believe them as much as a lot of bands say, "Oh, we're done," and then come back. For some reason, I believe them this time.
When you think back to that amazing HMV experience where you had 5 years of
Mm.
musical access and access to music lovers that have a deep knowledge and are sharing some great stuff. Does part of you get sad that that experience has kind of died off with music stores that have died off? Or do you think that the access to everything now that kids have with Spotify and Apple Music and all those, that it makes up for it?
I think it does in a bit of a way. I think the scene is certainly different. But it's nice to see music stores still existing, because I would think by now that they're done. When I left, I was one of 100 some odd employees that were laid off at that time, because people weren't going out to buy music, because like I said, it was the world of MP3s were coming in, downloading of them, buying on iTunes, whatever we want to be. It was people were buying DVDs, but then that turned into sort of the same thing. Cassettes were long gone, CDs were no longer valuable. But I was super happy to see, and you can see how happy behind me to see the resurgence of vinyl come back. I'm a relatively new vinyl collector, say within the last 15 years. We're growing up at those times. I had tons of friends that were DJs and collecting records. I just didn't see the value in them at that time. And I was all about CDs. That's what we were pushing. That's what the scene was. But I think I there's a couple record stores, even in Stratford. Record stores are happening now, and you can still go there and chat with people and converse about music. I think it's nice to be able to stream stuff and have access to everything, almost 99.9% of a music scape. But the downside is obvious that really easy for things to get lost in the shuffle, because there's just so much out there. You probably have seen, I found out through an Alan Cross podcast that there's a site called Forgotify. I think it's forgotify.com, that basically just it's a player that will play you all the songs that have never ever been played on Spotify. So I guess once you play it, that's no longer in that playlist, but it plays you because there are tens or hundreds of thousands of new songs added per day, some sort of ridiculous number like that there's so much that's never even been played, not once, by anyone, that there's a site that you can just have a player that nonstop plays stuff that's never been played. So there's that. Really easy to get lost in the shuffle. But if you've got it's who you know still. It's still how you look. And I don't know,
I've seen a post that went viral on Facebook or Instagram or somewhere, where there was a billboard and it said something like, "There's nothing more valuable than a friend that recommends good music."
Oh, I've seen that before too, man. I love that quote.
And I basically posted it because I think I'm that friend that's just like,
I do too,
always sharing music on Twitter.
I think I've shared that same thing a number of times, saying, "Yeah, I remember people."
Don't forget where you get your stuff from. Yeah.
I've had it. I still to this day have a lot of people say the same thing to me. "Oh, I heard about that from you," or "Thanks to you, got me into that." I love that sort of thing. I love being the connector of people to music. I feel like maybe once a year I'll just post on my Facebook or something like that. Put in the comments the name of a band that you like, and I'm going to tell you a band that you didn't know about that's similar to that, and find you something new, just for shits and giggles, man. I love that. That's why I do that's why I've been doing this radio show online called Nice Time Theme Radio since 2013. Trying to do it monthly as I did for the longest time. But now it's just sort of when I can dig it up. I don't want it to be a job and get bummed out by it. I want it to still be fun, but it's one of my avenues to share music and tell stories about it, so we don't forget these stories. And so I might enlighten somebody else on some music that they didn't know about that, would turn their head. The other thing I do is a monthly thing in Stratford now, with records, called Revival Vinyl Society over at Revival House in Stratford. It's a bring your own vinyl event, and people bring records out. I play the songs that they write on the list and ask me to play, and we talk about it in between the records. I'm not trying to DJ them or mix tunes or anything like that, but we actually encourage conversations about what's being played. I'll talk on the microphone about what I know or don't know about this record, or what it looks like, or yell at the person from across the room, like, what is this? What do I need to know about it, or whatever. And it's a really fun interactive experience. And we've been doing that for 6 years now. COVID messes up time. It hasn't gone regularly.
Why do you think that there is the revival when it comes to vinyl? And it's cool that your event is called Revival, right?
Yeah.
Vinyl Revival. So
It's called Revival Vinyl Society, and we did that because the place is held at a place called Revival House, but also because of what you interpreted it as well too. That it's feels like there's a vinyl revival happening in the last bunch of years. And there has been, if you're looking at sales and that kind of stuff. I think it's because the MP3 is not tangible. It's not something that you can really put a value to so much, because it is what it is. It's a digital file. Although let's not talk about NFTs.
The ones and zeros, yeah.
And then CDs, as we saw, kind of seemed to be not valuable. And then just records. Why it's funny, while the sound of records, disputable, not the best sound quality. You're going to get the best sound quality with the best headphones on the best speaker with the best recording on a digital format. What's the digital format? Is it CD? Is it AAC? Is it
lossless, whatever?
Lossless. Yeah. Is it Neil on a Neil Young ping pong player, whatever,
Sorry, did you hear that Kanye West so today is what, Sunday? So on Friday coming up, he's releasing Donda 2, and you can only get it on his personal $200 player. So he has his own like Tidal or Spotify or whatever. So you have to he wants, and obviously everything Kanye does, there's backlash, and it's like the new stupid thing that he's done. But he wants everyone to pay $200 for the album essentially to play it.
And you know how many? There'll be tons of people that do it.
Oh yeah,
that's not unreasonable. Tons of people that do it. And they'll get a player with it. That's the way they're looking at it. And whatever. I think that's that. And sound quality, again, disputable personal preference. But if you're getting scientific, digital is really going to be the cleanest, probably. But vinyl just it pulls all of that stuff and just sort of simplifies everything sound wise, I feel like, and it's nostalgic to a lot of people, depending on your age bracket. Some people love that warm kind of crackly bit of sound there behind there, but for me, beyond the sound as well, I mean, I love the sound. I love the sound of a properly mastered record for vinyl. But for me also, I'm, again, like I mentioned, I'm a visual artist first and foremost too. I went to school for graphic design. I love packaging. I love artwork on a record. I love all of that physical, tangible stuff. And oh man, like, when I figured when I realized I didn't have great copies of all of Bob Marley's catalog, they went and put this beautiful box set out. It's a massive lighter, right?
He would, yeah. That's awesome.
It's gorgeous. All the records all in here.
How many records are there? There's like 12 or something there.
There's the advertisement that kind of shows all of the albums, right? Just like beautiful packaging, beautifully remastered. The album covers are all redone the same.
Exodus, Legend,
die cut covers and embossed stuff, just like the originals. There's posters put inside of them, like some of the originals had. I love all of that kind of stuff. You're not getting that from buying an MP3 album or even a CD. It's that poster is folded up so many times there's creases all through it.
Where did this love of music come from? Like, can you think back to like an earliest musical memory where music actually meant something to you? Because, you know, as kids, we hear music, parents are playing
Yeah.
music, but it's just something that is. And then, you know, you might have a certain song or an album where it's the first time where it actually grips you and you feel the power of music as something that's your own.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Strangely enough, I mean, whenever somebody's asked me that question, well, first, whenever I've heard somebody else ask that question, another musician or a music fan, I find the answer is always that their parents were musicians or listened to a lot of music. Neither was the case in my house. My parents listened to some music, and I suppose I do have early memories of being infatuated by their small record collection, but nobody collected any music really per se. Although my stepdad did later, but that was further in my teens. I think I'd already been influenced by that time too. But anytime anybody's asked me that question, I've always thought of my first few performance memories. But thinking about it a bit deeper, I don't think I've ever mentioned this anytime in an interview before, but my earliest music memory of music really influencing me and having an effect on the way I was thinking was early elementary school. Man, like real early, but and would take the school bus, and for some reason I had a little ghetto blaster on me. It couldn't have been very big, battery powered, and I remember playing some kind of music that I was into at that time. I have no idea what it would have been. Would have been something rock, I imagine, maybe Michael Jackson. And I clearly have this memory of sitting at the back of the bus, playing this little boombox, and girls older than me, two girls older than me in particular, up over the seat in front, leaning over like, "What you doing?" kind of thing, and totally into what was going on, and that having an effect, being like, I remember a strong feeling of loving sharing the music that was influencing me with somebody else and showing it with somebody else, because it was like it was part of me, and showing it was like this, I'm showing you part of me, even though it's not, I had nothing to do with this. It's just something that has become part of me. It's weird to explain.
A little bit of vulnerability and a little bit of acceptance there as well.
Yeah, and mad excitement that people were paying it. I was listening to this with other people, and they seem to be affected by it too. Yeah, so I have a strong memory of that. But then the other prominent ones that always come to mind first seem to be performance ones, the first two performance ones, and having an audience in front of me and feeling that thing. I'm not quite sure which one came first, but one would have been at a camp that I went to as a kid. I went to a boys camp called Camp Pure Ontario on Georgian Bay, and a campfire, had some cabin mates who played acoustic guitar, and we would just sing songs before bed or whatever, jam out in the cabin. And for some reason, Blind Melon's song Change, real high pitched, slower tune, was something that I could sing in a range that nobody else was able to sing. I remember the guy playing, my friend Matt, who played the guitar, and other friends who were playing were surprised that I was able to sing that so well. Maybe we should do that at the campfire. Okay, shit, let's do that at the campfire. And the feedback from other campmates and musicians was very similar. I'm like, okay, this is cool. What's next? What are we gonna do next? That and a high school lunchtime cafe that was really just on the stage in the gym with the curtain closed. They would allow some student bands or student musicians to take the stage there and entertain kids for an hour during lunch. And I remember doing a couple Beck songs with a friend acoustically. Specifically, the one that stands out was an early folk tune of his called "Satan Gave Me a Taco."
It's a snappy title.
A snappy lunchtime song. And so that, I guess, my peers at school and then my peers at camp that had an influence and effect on me, them seeing them like, wow, it's awesome, man, blah blah blah, being like, okay, I got something here. Something is here beyond even just singing and the music, but it's affecting people, and I like that it makes them happy. And
Were you singing before those two experiences, or that's kind of where,
I think like
everyone was just singing for fun around the campfire, and then
I think like everybody else, like singing like everybody else before then, at school assemblies, or church or whatever, or that kind of thing, but not really soloing anything or singing with a band or whatever, just singing along, let's say, like everybody else. Yeah, not trying to stand out or any of that just yet.
You've talked a little bit about growing up in Stratford. So you are officially the second most famous person out of Stratford after one Justin Bieber. And, all you have to do is sell 100 million albums and be worth $500 million, and then we can surpass him as the most famous, But how much do you think Stratford itself influenced who you became as a person and as a musician?
Well, funny enough, I don't know that I would. I mean, I thank you for the compliment of the second most famous Stratford musician, but I can't take that just yet. I got to hand that to someone like Lorena McKennett is from here. She's massive Canadian Celtic music internationally,
from Stratford.
Yeah, and a very influential
what's in the
lady
water
here
in Stratford?
Oh man, she's heavy here too. She owns a private school and is really like, talk about somebody who really carves their own path in the music industry. She does, and in our community as well too. Heavy influence that lady has. And then another beautiful lady who closer to my age bracket that I grew up with and I didn't go to high school with, but we had mutual friends, and I knew her during our high school days and knew her when she was signed to EMI Records and launched her first album. And she still lives here and is a big pride of Stratford. And that's Dana Manning.
Oh yeah, I know Dana. Yeah.
Fantastic, beautiful friend. And my name is in the thank you notes of her first album. I think just because I put her on a few shows around town with some other friends and had connected and was really digging what she was doing. And then as it turned out, I ended up becoming good friends with a lot of the people that she was working with at EMI and through the music industry in Toronto. Then I would jump into that over the next few years, because the Salads, like our Full Day to Be album and Big Picture, by then it was Warner. So while everything we had was released on independently, sort of a co-thing through our name is Maui Wowie Records on all of our stuff, but Full Day to Be and Big Picture were both also released through Kindling Records, which is owned by our management at that time. They had a distribution deal with EMI. So Full Day to Be came out there and had EMI's support, somewhat kind of thing, a bit of their help. We knew a lot of their people. And then that same record and Big Picture went to Warner Brothers afterwards, but was still, that was just the new major that was distributing Kindling. So we ended up knowing a lot of the same people and so forth. But those two in particular, Dana was a big influence just on me being like seeing one of my first witnessing a friend, go into the industry a bit more serious and seeing videos on Much Music and that kind of stuff. And wow, yeah, it was a bit closer to home. And man, Richard Manuel was born in Stratford. Richard Manuel was
Richard Manuel
in the band, the band,
like the band,
like the band,
like
band.
Bob Dylan's The Band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. Stratford native,
like The Weight.
Yeah, man.
Band.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Richard Manuel.
They've released some of the greatest albums of all time. Okay, so you're officially like the fifth or sixth most famous.
And you know what else? I didn't realize this. I was surprised too, because maybe she was only here for a short period of time. So I'm surprised because I feel like we're close to the same age maybe she's a little bit older than me. I don't know. But Estero is from Stratford as well too. I didn't even know that one until well after. A metal band called Baptized in Blood.
Yep.
Their lead singer Joel Fenley is a close friend of mine. He's from
Man, we've
Stratford.
opened a can of worms from Stratford.
There you go.
So if Estero is from Stratford, isn't her brother Jay Englishman, who is also big?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. I don't know what
You don't
part
know
of
if
her
they like
life.
grew up there or when they were
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I'm not sure if Jay was here too. But and tons of people that have moved here since. Ron Sexsmith is one of my neighbors just down the street.
He's
Uh,
awesome.
it's and Paul McCartney and Elton John think so too. They're big
Yeah.
fans of his. He's just down the street. I see him all the time, walking around town. Uh, Gene, who actually Jay Englishman, Gene's husband, Stefan Sesniak, who also plays in my Bob Marley tribute sometimes, is a dear friend. She plays with Gene. Gene is tight with the Broken Social scene, and Ian Blurton has produced her last couple records. She does kind of like I describe it as sort of a Breeders Pixies kind of a vibe. She's really rad. Her and Steph live in town.
And the more I talk, the more I do these interviews, the more the same names are coming up. Like you think, oh, it's a big world out there, but the Canadian music industry,
It's
it's
so
like
incestuous. It's a big family
everyone
party.
I talk to knows everyone, and this person started here and was a part of that and referenced this person. I volunteered at Canadian Music Week way back in the day when I first graduated as an audio engineer, and I was helping out one guy that actually knew what he was doing. And at the end, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm Jay." And then someone says, "Whatever, Jay Englishman," and I'm like you're Jay Englishman? He's like, "Yep." I'm like, "The Jay Englishman with like a platinum album?" He's like, "Yep." I'm like, "Oh my god!" I was with him for like 4 hours before I knew he was the Jay Englishman that I
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
fan of, like seeing his videos on Much Music. So it's such a
I've
small
hung out
world.
with Jay a number of times. I feel like we've done a number of shows together, and we've got a lot of mutual friends. And he's been around the scene. A fan of music again too. He's often in the crowd. We've been in the crowd at a lot of things
Mm.
together.
I have my sister used to listen to Estero, so I was
Mm-hmm.
lucky that I have an older sister that before I was into music, she was listening to Rage Against the Machine, Bush, Nirvana, Our Lady Peace Clumsy. I remember her having Estero, Portishead. Like she
Yeah,
knew. I should thank her. She doesn't listen to much music now, I don't think, but
it's amazing
back in the
what
day, she knew what was
whether
up.
whether you were actually listening to it with her or not, or in the same room or anything. It's amazing how that kind of that seeps in through like osmosis sort of thing from your youth, eh? Like uh, you want to deny it as a kid, and my teenager denies it like crazy, but I'm constantly playing music around the house, and often with the thought in mind that they're gonna love that shit when down the road, not now, but down, maybe not now, but definitely down the road. I love a lot of stuff that my parents were playing, specifically more when I was a little bit older and more in my teens, that stuff. And again, like I mentioned earlier, my stepdad was big into music and analyzing it. I loved to sit down and analyze music with him when he was alive, and inherited he collected like these crazy stereo pieces that I was just terrified to touch. And I own them to this day, and I'm still terrified to touch them. I hit the on off switch and I let my like engineer, like gear tech friends tweak it, and then I don't let anybody touch it, myself included. Shout out to Siegfried Meyer at Beach Road Studios, who was
London,
just
Ontario.
who was just here, Godrich area, who was just here uh, the other day, catching up with me and helping me tweak some of my system. He just recorded and released he's recorded the last two Face to Face albums. The most recent one on Fat Records being their last record ever. I think they've announced that. He announced that to me, anyways.
Oh, world premiere. We got some rumors.
Yeah, but like, yes.
So Siegfried Meyer was actually a teacher of mine at OEArt for audio engineering, which is
Nice.
yeah.
You know what? And my other Siegfried story connected to the salads is he was a lot of people know he was the engineer on Full Day to Be.
You got Dan Broadbeck in there somewhere,
With Dan
probably.
Broadbeck, of course. Yeah, exactly. But I had no idea that Siggy was even working over at Emacs Studios when we were before recording that album. So Sig and I went to different high schools in Stratford. We both grew up in Stratford. He played in some punk bands that I had friends that connected with and saw a lot. I knew about Siggy. And then I moved to Toronto, joined the Salads. The day comes that we're starting to record our album with Full Day to Be at Emacs Studios in London. I'm the guy that knocks on the door. Siegfried's the guy on the other side that opens it. Like, we're both like, what the hell are you doing here? And thus continued a more dear part of our relationship. And good friend still to this day. He does a lot of cool shit and he's one of those rare gems that has ears. Do you know what I mean? He has ears like no other. And you hear musicians say that where they struggle to describe how tight a person's ears and skill set is in the studio. It's a hard thing to describe. You hear the same names of people and be like, wow, the person's just got it. They've got something that they hear something that nobody else hears and they can fix it or adjust it faster than anybody else. And that's just rare to find. And
Speaking of Siegfried and ears, he recently posted about 2 new headphones that he's been testing out that he absolutely loves, and I took note of those. You know, my favorite thing in the world is putting on a good pair of studio headphones and just lying down and listening to full albums at a time. So these ones are great, but you know, I bought them probably 4 or 5 years ago, and technology is always updating, you know. So
I have this microphone because of Siggy. I was just like, I'm just looking to get something that's only a couple $100, or I'm not looking to spend a whole lot. I just need something USB straight into my laptop, simple, no stuff in between, no extra apps and blah blah blah
XLR blah. Converter to whatever, no preamp.
Exactly, no preamp, none of that business. And he recommended this Audio Technica thing. It helped me sort of get it properly set up, although it was really, really easy. I'm just, like I said,
he held really your hand and stuff. He pushed the HDMI. No, he pushed the USB into the computer. And
yeah, I think it was just like, I just happened to catch him when he was coming through, and we hadn't seen each other in a while, and you know, because of the whole pandemic and everything, it's nice to see anybody when they invite you over. So we hung out and I had a really, really great catch up, and he was just, it's just a button here, dude. Just and now it works.
Yeah. Don't be scared. It's just one button.
Yeah, but he told me about those headphones as well too, and I've had my eye on them a bit as well.
Whoever gets the pair first we'll tell each other.
Yeah. Awesome. Let me know.
Awesome.
He was right.
We have a question sent in here from a fan.
Oh, cool.
So this question is from Tara Brienne Philippi. This comes from Instagram. She wants to know, where does the band name come from for the Salads, and does it have a special meaning, or is it just sounds cool?
Well, since we're not as active as we once were, I'll give you the honest answer because
normally you wouldn't.
Because naturally, that is a popular question. Any interview with any band, where the name come from, and to keep things fun, we wouldn't always give an honest answer, or honest to say that like we would just change the answer, or there were different reasons for it. So not completely dishonest, just we each had our own version of it. But the real honest to goodness one, I mean, the fake ones we've put out there are just other things. You know, we're big Simpsons fans, which is true. We're the Simpsons, and there's an episode where they're all dancing around that you don't make friends with salads. Don't make friends. We got it from that. No, we didn't. Or you know, we're a mix of genres, like a salad of mix of vegetables. It works. again, it depended on who was asking us, whether it was an all ages friendly audience or not. If a little kid was asking us, or we would give the Simpsons answer or the salad answer, or whatever. Or if it was, you needed to just answer quickly, one of those. But
you're so considerate.
The real honest answer is that when the guys were growing up, they all lived in the same house, crazily enough, with a few other friends that were musicians. When the Salads were kind of first starting, before I joined, they would throw parties. A good friend of ours named Cam Pizak would often be the friend sitting at the door, collecting contributions, not of any money or anything, but of small nugs of cannabis, and throw them together into the salad bowl. And at some point of the night, somebody would mix all these different strains of weed that people would contribute into the salad joint and roll a big salad joint. And then there would be a red light or a green light in the basement, and they'd hit it on, and the light would go on, and it was salad time. And during one of those pass the Dutchie to the left-hand side sessions, somebody was, hey, you guys should call this band the Salads. Ta-da!
Thank you for not sharing that with the little kids when they ask. Thank you for having a PG-13 version, or younger, I guess, an all ages version.
Drug-free youth. That's good. We still promote that.
That's awesome. I have a comment sent in here, and we were talking about the ska bands that really had an influence and were popular in the mid 90s. So this comes to us from Goldfinger member. This is Darren Pfeiffer, who actually played for the Salads as well, right? The drummer at some point.
Yes, indeed. A long period of time. I would say 7 years, and still we consider the band a 5-piece now. And if/when there's a reunion, it will be a 5-piece. If lots of ifs and whens, but that's sidetracking. Sorry.
Awesome.
Pfeiffer is my brother.
So I asked Darren, what is it that you love about this Darren as a musician and as a person? He put, Darren Mr. D. Dumas is one of my best friends and one of the sweetest souls you'll ever meet. One of those guys that always has a smile and a positive thing to say. And at times I really needed that energy. I miss him and look forward to reconnecting with him again ASAP. So it's Darren Pfeiffer from Goldfinger as well as the Salads. How does that make you feel on a Sunday morning?
Oh, warm and fuzzy. And what's crazy is, as awesome as that is to hear, I can't say I'm surprised, because I'm not trying to sound pompous about it or anything. I'm just saying that my relationship with Pfeiffer is so close, and the way I think we've all, as far as the Salads go, have been and built a relationship with him has been so close. We're all honest with each other. We've always told each other how much we love each other. That's something that I'll continue to do, and I'm proud of. And the love has been very obvious, and it's always been very present. Pfeiffer and I were the first in the band to click. I remember he had moved to Toronto because he had married a lady in Toronto. He was at a show on Queen Street. The Scatolites from Jamaica, like original ska band, were playing in Toronto, and he was in the crowd. And our manager's office was right across the street at the time. And our manager was there at the show too. And I'm like, yo, put down that drink, go grab some CDs across the street. And he's like, do I have to? I'm like, get your fucking, go get some CDs right now.
Do you know who this is?
Yeah. I'm like, I want to give Darren Pfeiffer from Goldfingers here. I want to give him a CD. He's okay, fine. Gets his ass finally back over. And I met Darren and just, fanboyed him a CD. And, few days later, got an email or a phone call, and he got in touch with us that he wanted to connect with us and work with us, or just say hey. He came to some rehearsals. I think at that time we were also starting to work on Big Picture, and then he co-wrote the tune "It's All Right" on Big Picture with us, and was there for the creation of it all. He was there for, after that record was written, Grant sort of was having a disinterest in just the industry itself. We were all still brothers and stuff,
It's a
but
tough
just
industry.
it was just beating him down, and he needed to just have a regular job, and so he stepped out from that. Pfeiffer filled in on a couple shows, but we ultimately needed a more permanent guy. He sat in with us on auditions that we had for a few days with dozens of other guys. The very last guy of the last day was Legs, Ryan Leger, who played with Every Time I Die, Norma Jean, ton of other bands after playing with us for I don't know, maybe about a year or so. And then we were writing more, and he wanted to be gigging more, and they invited him out. And when they did, Pfeiffer jumped into that seat, and he was there the whole time, but naturally became our more permanent drummer. And then he, of course, is the drummer on our last record that we've released, the Music Every Day. And Pfeiffer and I, man, even all through that time, Pfeiffer and I had a radio show together called the Darren and Darren Show. It was on Punk Radio Cast and a few other stations, just online stuff. And that show was really just a recording of what we would naturally do. He was and is running his High 4 Records. So it was getting music from a lot of other artists, finding new things, wanting to sign things, seeing other bands live, digging out old stuff that's been influencing him while I was doing the same. And then we'd meet once every couple of weeks with a stack of music and literally, hey, check this song out. What do you think? And be straight up honest. But in a radio show format, like, that sucked. Or that was really awesome. But while we have a lot of similar musical influences, we've got a lot, I think, like Pfeiffer likes hip hop, but my knowledge of hip hop, I would say, is deeper than his. I like some more somber, darker stuff sometimes, but Pfeiffer knows way more about, the Smiths and The Cure and Morrissey and all that kind of stuff that isn't fully my bag. But we had a lot of common ground, and brother from another mother that I'll love to the day I die. I love that guy.
One thing that was super apparent when listening to the discography for the Salads is, even though you guys are, you're labeled ska or ska rock or whatever, man, I'm hearing funk, ska, rock, jazz, metal, alternative. Like, I'm hearing like 15 genres. So how are you guys able to take all those genres and make a sound that is identifiable as the Salad? So it's a unique sound. It's hard to have a unique sound as a band these days. How could you possibly take all those influences and make it work and make it the Salads?
Yeah, it's tough. Really tough and really crazy. I think some of our best work, like, I could put money on the fact you've heard this 1,001 times before. Some of our best stuff came together really quick. Get Loose is probably one of the fastest songs we ever pulled together, minus the tempo change in studio that I just had to roll with and sing faster. But yeah, we drew from a lot of bands that had a lot of influences, a la Fishbone and Chili Peppers and that kind of stuff. And then our other separate influences, from being different in age and growing up in different areas, also putting a shine on things and creating what is our sound, but then also the common understanding, and that this common understanding also being pounded into our heads. And I'm sure every other artist around that time, and maybe even still, that, stick to what works, do the pop structure, verse, chorus, verse, bridge, chorus. There's structures. There's keep it under 3 minutes, all that kind of stuff. So those parameters being pounded into our heads as well too, and brought constantly to our attention. helped us keep things not too crazy. And easy for someone to put some kind of label on it, which is always some needed somewhere, be it in the physical record store. Which section does it go in? Be it pitched to a radio station. What, is it rock radio or is this urban? What station is it just college radio? What stations do we pitch to play this kind of stuff? I don't know. While that was in our heads, we didn't let it really overpower us, for better or for worse. Again, coming from that same kind of school and understanding that you can't take in too much of what everybody else is telling you to do. You've got to just do what feels good, because if you're not having fun with it, that's what don't bother. So that's just the first and foremost. Have fun with it. And as soon as people forget that stuff, that's when it gets stale and boring and all that kind of jazz. And then, you start to sound like everything else that's trying to sound like everything else and trying to fit in genres and in pockets. So that's a fine line to ride, though. It's a good question.
Some of those songs were surprisingly heavy, like coming from a background where I was more familiar with, some of the more pop and catchy numbers that you guys have. There was a lot of heavy songs, like remarkably heavy, that I like. I love heavy music, so I was totally digging it, but was caught off guard, caught by surprise. But it was still the Salads. It still worked. It was still awesome. Who would you say is the heaviest band that you've played with live? Because with all the different sounds and influences, I mean, you could open for Fishbone, but you could also open for a really heavy band. I'm just curious. And I guess another question is, was it easier to get booked on shows because you could kind of fit in with, you could play a little heavier if you need to this set. You could play a little more ska if you need to that set.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and because of our amalgamation of genres, we could lean towards a bill, right, of what other bands were doing on that bill and try and fit in a little bit more. Yeah, definitely leaning on the heavier side if it suited the crowd, or poppier side, or if it's an all ages crowd, lean on the goofiness and the poppier sort of things. Whatever, a bit more serious if it's a 19 plus, whatever the case. But heaviest bands we played with, Fishbone always comes to mind. But like, I'm looking at a wall of gig posters that I have in front of me as well too, and trying to see if I could pick some stuff up off of it. There's a heavy band out of Montreal that we played with a number of times called Grimskunk.
Okay, that's who Chuck thought you were probably playing with.
Oh yeah.
When I saw Radiohead in Montreal,
Mm-hmm.
This was around the Hail to the Thief album, which I think is like 2003-ish.
Yep.
So
we've done a bunch of stuff with Baptized in Blood, like I mentioned. They're buddies of ours. Super heavy. Goldfinger we played with. We did a Wakestock festival with Dead Kennedys and Goldfinger. That's leaning on the more of the punk side of things. We also did a really great show. Oh my God, 11 years ago, at the Hard Luck Bar, where I pulled together this great heavy bill reuniting Regadeth, fronted by Mishi Me, who are all friends of ours, but would rarely play, but brought them together with us. Sumo Psycho, who are really close friends of ours. So we played with them a lot too. They're fucking heavy and have just gotten a lot heavier over the years.
Mishi Me is kind of hip hop, isn't it?
Absolutely. Mishi Me is the queen of Canadian hip hop.
Yeah, there's some early Drake stuff that has Mishi Me involved in it, I believe.
Yeah, Mishi and Maestro, the queen and the king of Canadian hip hop, and anybody who is coming up like Drake would definitely pay tribute to them and have to acknowledge their position. But Mishi had a heavy dancehall metal group called Regadeth, with some of the guys in Monster Voodoo Machine and a few other bands. And that was heavy. They had some big singles and stuff, but then stopped. She did more solo stuff for a while. They went on to do other things, and yeah, but crazy band. And with us, Regadeth and Sumo, that was an awesome bill. Heavy, awesome bill. I love heavy bands in like a small venue, like Hard Luck. That's fun. Love that kind of stuff.
I saw Protest the Hero in a venue with like 48 people. It was like the
Yeah,
smallest
yeah.
venue of all time before they were
Isn't that
big.
great? We've played with them as well too. Like again, before they were big, we've
Yeah.
done some wake stocks with them before.
They helped me boost my car after the show, so I have
I remember hanging
a
out backstage
moment
with
with them.
I remember hanging out backstage with most of the band. I feel like it was their guitar player with longer hair. I've not followed the band since really too much, but have seen that their success and whatnot. But what stands out, I remember him telling me that his girlfriend was a big fan, and she had a I don't know how this happened. She has a poster of me on her bedroom wall that he kept seeing all the time, and I'm like, a poster? We never put posters of.
I was just gonna say it gets awkward because she literally just took your picture and blew it up.
She would have made a poster or something. Anyways, yeah, funny, flattering.
You,
nice
you know
guys.
how you have in your relationship, you're allowed the one celebrity that you're allowed to hook up with if ever they come to town, and it's allowed. I feel like you're that guy for the guy's girlfriend, which is weird. Anyways,
totally awkward.
Maybe
Right?
we'll change the subject before he sees this. Maybe he'll be a guest in the future.
Yeah.
Speaking of the live stuff, there's a question that one of my friends wanted to know about the Salads, about the live show. So you guys had a break dancer, you had Libido on stage. My understanding is his job was to act like a hype man and to raise the energy levels. Is that an accurate description? And what did he bring to the live show that made you guys unique, or help make you guys unique?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what Libido did. Libido being his nickname.
Libido, not libido. My bad.
Yeah. No, it looks like libido as he spells it. But it pronounces it Libido, and but his real name is Darren, which we found
There's
out.
way too many Darrens in the music industry. So learning, and they're all spelled differently.
Yeah, exactly. There aren't that many out there, but for some reason, 3 of them seem to find their way into the Salads during our history. But Libido, as he's more fondly known by, is one of the best b-boys in Toronto still to this day. I mean, it goes down in history. You ask anybody that's in that scene in Canada, in Toronto, they'll mention him, and just you could recognize Libido's silhouette dancing, that he's just so unique and has such staple moves of his own. He's a teacher as well now in Toronto, and is just a character like no other, and we love the guy to death. So he came into the band because one thing that helped sort of kick the Salads popularity off when we were in Toronto, and I was working at HMV, making all these connections with different people, again, in different genres of music. I wanted to start putting shows together with this hip hop act and that metal band and this reggae band and this breakdance crew and the Salads. And no promoters wanted to mess with that kind of stuff. They wanted just a rock show or a ska show or hip hop show and keep it straight. And I'm like, let's just try this. I want to do this. And then we're going to do it under the wing of Salad Gold. I did over a decade or so. I did a ton of Salad Gold shows, which were just that. It was just a variety party of a bunch of different acts that were polar opposites from each other. And a breakdancing crew was always thrown on the bill to just be there to dance. So always somebody in the crowd being like, I've never seen a breakdancer dance to a rock metal band or a reggae band or whatever. It was a beautiful audio and visual representation of, again, the multiculturalism in Toronto, mashing all the genres of music and backgrounds together, and it worked. And it became so successful and so big. And one show in particular, Libido's crew, Back to Basics, were put on a bill. The rest of his guys didn't show up for some reason. And by the time we were on stage, we were just like, you come up here with us. So he did the whole show with us. We loved it. He loved it. The audience loved it. We kind of kept with it. And we're like, okay, you be part of the band, you get paid like we do on shows as an equal member of the band. And it made sense to us, again, thanks to these guys that were the only other band that we knew that had a dancer on stage as part of the band. The boss tone was the dude that just came out and danced in the boss tones for their entire existence. He came out and skanked his face off in a pinstripe suit from start to finish, sweating an equal amount as the rest of the band. And that's exactly what Libido did. Libido made up his own dance move, danced his face off to all the genres of everything that was going on. And again, fed off the crowd with me, and the crowd fed off of him. And it was just another angle of the show. And Libido was with us, I would say, for a good 5-ish years or so. And then by the time we were writing and working on Big Picture, the follow-up to Full Day to Be, our peers like Billy Talent and Flashlight Brown were all swaying away from their funky ska roots, and we're starting to rock out more. The 3 Days Grace stuff was popping on the radio. That was the sound of what was coming out. So the two things everybody was telling us to do: write a whole record of Get Looses and rock out more. But more so the first, just it was successful. Write a whole record of Get Looses next, because that's what's going to work. We have not always been the best band to listen to everybody telling us what to do, and would often go in the other direction. And again, seeing our peers doing more rock, we decided to just do more of a rock record. And that's what came out of Big Picture. It was a little bit, and plus also there was a lot more serious stuff happening in our lives, families, marriage, getting married, having kids. Chuck just started to have babies. And again, Grant was feeling stressed about the whole industry. The industry was weighing on us more than it had ever been. So we wrote a bit more of a serious record. Content wise, I was writing a bit more serious songs. It was almost like self-therapy kind of thing, self-healing songs. At the same time, if this works for me and I can lift somebody else up with these songs, that's what we're here for. That's what we do. That's what we want to be doing. So that became that record. And in that, we decided not to tour with Libido, also because it was going to be a bit more affordable on us. Traveling with 4 guys instead of 5 guys means 2 rooms at a hotel instead of 3 rooms. All that kind of stuff. It was just a more even number to travel with the 4 of us. And Libido was also doing more dance stuff in Toronto. It just sort of made sense. But what a great time. And even so I think Libido popped up on maybe 1 or 2 shows for like a song since then, other than the very last show that we've ever played, which was in 2016 in Bayfield, Ontario, opening for David Wilcox. Somehow Libido, just before that, got back in touch with us and was like, we need to do this again. I need to come back in the band and we need to full force. Little did he know we were kind of unspokenly winding down a tiny little bit at that time. And we're nowhere near it's our time, we need to get back at it vibe as Libido. But he came to that show with us and we rocked that show. So awesome with him. Actually, that was that day.
That's awesome. And David Wilcox is actually on a song from the first album, Memories. Is that the connection that got you that show that day? And Brian Byrne, I don't know, is that before he's on the same song from the first album? Is Brian Byrne, is that pre I Mother Earth as well?
No, that was while he was still in I Mother Earth.
Okay.
But he was also doing a solo thing. We had same management as Brian, and Chuck was starting to play with I Mother Earth. His part so Wilcox and Brian are both on the same song on on our Music Every Day
Wilcox is
record.
like talking almost, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he was on a sabbatical from playing guitar. So as he does, he kind of will stop. He won't even pick up a guitar for a year or two,
Whoa.
and then and then come back to it to just feel that passion again. That's what works for him. So during that time, we want whatever kind of contribution you can give us to this record, awesome. He's like, well, I'm not playing guitar right now. Okay. Not really singing. I'm not really practicing that so much. He was just living life without those things, taking a break from them. But Jack, do you want to speak? Can you do some spoken stuff on it? And he actually, his spoken bits are stuff that I wrote, in addition to my lyrics, as well as some of the lyrics he's quoting, and then a little bit of his own thing, as he always puts his own spin on stuff. So that's how and why we got that out of him on that track. Brian's part, the reason why I remember Chuck was in I Mother Earth at that time is because Chuck recorded Brian's part for that song immediately after a show. Like after he stepped off stage and stepped backstage, their backstage or a part of the backstage happened to be another venue space where Chuck just set up a laptop and mic on the stage. And while Brian was drained and exhausted and totally worn out and just screamed his lungs out, walk right into this microphone and scream random stuff. I think he had a few lines to go off of, but the rest is sort of freestyled. And we wanted that screaming Brian version because he can scream. And to get a scream out of somebody after they've been screaming for an hour already is extra special and extra emotional, and just you really get that thing. It reminds me of like I don't know, you're a heavy metal fan, so you must be familiar with Lamb of God.
They're on the bill for the Megadeth show I'm going to see.
There you go. Exactly. I saw some footage of them recording once, and their lead singer just couldn't get a vocal take right, and they made him run around the studio building a few times and then come right back in, press record when he's worn out and burnt from just running at top speed around the building, and got the best screams out of him. I think for that kind of a singer, you just get a different, for any kind of singing, you get a different voice from being well rested and clean and speaking or singing at a speaking tone or whatever. But to run around and wear yourself out and then come in and give that energetic thing, it's just an extra bit of something else. So that's how we got that from Brian on that tune as well too. And that's how they both ended up being on there. But meeting Wilcox was because Dave in the Salads first became a guitar tech for Wilcox, just through industry friends and people. And then he got interested in that. Chuck jumped in through Dave's connection. Like they were both helping him at the same time. And that Chuck has been more permanently with the Wilcox crew, going on the road. He still techs for Wilcox to this day. Yeah. And I know Dave from, his friends call him by his real name. It's not Dave Wilcox. And I know him because I worked at a health food store for about 4 years as the Salads were slowing down from touring in Toronto, called the Big Carrot. And he and his wife are regulars there. His wife is lovely. They're both super, super lovely. And the thing I always took away from Dave, which you may not take away, it's something people may not notice as much anymore these days, as we're not shaking hands so much, but the man has the softest hands you've ever shook. Like, I swear he moisturizes them.
He needs a sponsorship from a moisturizing cream company.
It's like, it's crazy. It's like that's what I always took away every time. Like, man, this guy, he's got such soft hands. Just, I don't know if it's just a combination of his age and the healthy food he's eating now after a tumultuous lifestyle, or his wife helping just better him, or if he's moisturizing every few seconds, but he's got hella soft hands.
Everyone else is like, oh, he's a great guitarist. He's a great
How
songwriter.
did,
I love
yeah.
this song. I love that album. And you're like, but have you touched his hand? The
Hey,
softest hands.
most guitar players have ugly ass hands and full of calluses and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. And maybe it's also due to the breaks that he takes from playing guitar or whatever. But anyways, that and of course his voice, his speaking. He's got a presence and is a lovely man. Yeah.
I remember. So I grew up in a small town called Russell, Ontario. It's about
Hmm.
30 minutes outside of Ottawa, heading towards Montreal. And there
Okay.
was the Russell Fair. And there's only 3,000 people total. But we would get big artists in because all 3,000 people would go to that one concert at the fair. So we got some pretty big names. And David Wilcox was the headliner one year. So I remember as a kid, David Wilcox played, and he was pretty badass.
You know what? I always knew his name. It was always a staple in Canadian rock history. But as a kid, that's all it was to me. It was the old guy, classic rock stuff. I heard his name, as I'm sure I would have heard it and respected it faster as a musician as well too, if I was picking up an instrument, but I wasn't. And it was the older guy stuff. I would say even up until I think my opinion started to change when Q107, classic rock radio station in Toronto, was celebrating their 30th anniversary. Kim Mitchell was still a DJ and a radio an announcer on there. And for their 30th anniversary, he was going to reunite Max Webster. And the bill was Wilcox, Alana Miles, Honeymoon Suite, I think maybe another one or two, and headlined by Max Webster. Flashback a few, I want to say maybe a month or so. We're rehearsing, like I said, at Cherry Beach Studios where we had a space. And after we're done a practice, the owner comes in, one of the managers comes in and was like, you know that Kim Mitchell was sitting outside of your room for a while, like just listening to you. Mostly, obviously, your guitar player was wanking for a while, but he was sitting out and then asked me who was in that room. So I told him it was the Salads, and he went away like, oh, cool. We're all wow. Like, I grew up listening to his solo stuff. My guys grew up listening to Max Webster and some of his solo stuff, but I still have Rockland and all the and I Am a Wild Party all on cassette still, and was a fan of all that stuff. So we're like, damn, that's cool. As we mentioned to our manager this story, and he reaches out to say, hey, the Salads heard about this. We'd love to, connect with you somehow, whatever. Fast forward again now to the show happening, and he reaches out. His people reach out to our management and wants to put us on the bill of this 30th anniversary for Q107 to open the whole show. Q107 people aren't having it because the Salads are not classic rock. This is not a classic. This is a classic rock bill by a classic rock station celebrating their anniversary. We're not classic rock. Not going to happen. Apparently, for what we were told, Kim Mitchell told them that if the Salads weren't on the bill, he wasn't going to be on the bill. We hadn't even met the guy yet. I have not even met him still to this day to sit down and have a formal conversation. We may have shaken hands at some point, but it's not. I don't really recall any kind of real meeting, introduction sort of thing. But so for someone to go at bat that hard for us we're like, what? Fast forward. So we're like, well, we're do this. They're only going to give us, I think maybe 15, 20 minutes of a set, start off the night. We're like, we're going to do this properly. Like whenever we were brought on bills like that to just play for a little bit, it was like, well, we're going to slay for that short period of time, all balls out and no filler, all killer for that period of time. If that's all you're given. And knowing the situation and knowing the crowd that we were going to be in front of, packed crowd at the Sound Academy, predominantly a bit older than us, mostly coming in from out of town, your classic rock crowd. So you can get our set online somewhere. I'm sure we put it out as a free download. It became pretty epic. But we rehearsed and put together a classic rock medley. Just took the list of like the top 40 songs off of their website that they were playing at the time and put them all together into one song. epic. The crowd lost their mind and sang along with it, and all that sort of stuff went off into our version of Hot for Teacher by Van Halen, slaying them because nobody plays that song, or if they do, they're not playing it as well or as intense as we put it down. And gave them Get Loose, busted out, to leaving them just like jaws on the ground, like, what the hell was that? Soon as we step off the stage, there's a video interview with Kim Mitchell backstage going on. It was pre-recorded, but going on about how he found us, stumbled upon us, and we're the future of classic rock. We didn't know that was going to happen either, and we're standing side stage like, what is going on? This is so bizarre. But that just reminded me, because that sort of made me start to pay more attention to more of our classic rock Canadian artists that I hadn't already, Wilcox being one of them. I knew his name and whatever, but had never stood side stage to watch the man so close, or met him and had conversations with him and so forth. And I'm thankful for all that, and still would love to meet Kim Mitchell one day.
I have a picture with Kim Mitchell from when I was at Metalworks for a few years. He came in for an event, which is pretty cool. I have a comment sent in here for you. So we've talked a lot about our mutual friend, Mr. Chuck Daly. So he sent in a long comment here. So I'm going to read this to do it justice. He says, it took about 2 minutes of watching Dee perform in his band Chronic for all of us in the Salads to come to an agreement. He is our singer. Amazingly, our mutual friend Jesse connected us, and the rest is history. He has a unique gift of sharing himself with a crowd. When he's on stage, smiling at the crowd is completely infectious. He has the ability to connect with a huge crowd on a personal level. Everyone can feel his love, and it simply feels like a hang with your favorite friend. And I'm one of the uber lucky ones to say one of my most favorite things to do in the world is to hang with Dee, my most favorite of friends. Dee has a sense of rhythm that is far beyond my own sense of groove too. Producing albums with him for so many years was such a gift. Touring Canada together has been such a gift. Having families and growing older together has been such a gift. Dee is a beautiful man and a wonderful friend, and off the charts performer and musician. I sure do love me some Mr. D. That's from Chuck Daly, The Salads, and now I'm Mother Earth.
I didn't put my Kleenexes anywhere close by.
See, I made him cry during our interview when he was reminiscing about the good times and his son being proud of him. And he said that it's the first time maybe in his whole life where he really sat down and thought about what he had accomplished and the challenges and the interview. And because of the pandemic, where a lot of us are very lonely and we're not out there sharing our gift with the world, we don't feel a sense of there's a need for us anymore. And he got very teary-eyed during my interview with him. So this is payback maybe to say some kind words to you. So how does it feel having some kind words from someone that means a lot to you like that?
Well, like I said, I don't want this to sound, I expected it, because that's not what it is. I know and I feel that, and I'm so thankful for, we often spill all those feelings after people pass away. But we've been very open among the Salads. That being said, we've not always been, the closest and tightest of brothers. Sometimes we just wanted to kill each other, but I guess that's what families are like too. And that's what a brotherly kind of relationships can be. I feel all that and more right back at Chuck. We've totally had our ups and downs, but we probably have the tightest relationship among two guys in the Salads, of any two guys in the Salads. And maybe that's partially due to us having getting married and having kids starting around the same time, or just being the kind of dudes that we are. I think maybe we tend to wear our hearts on our sleeve a little bit more than the other guys. Certainly with Dave. Dave does not have a heart on his sleeve. He's got a heart and it's big, but it's deep down there. It's a hard one to find.
And Chuck is very very not, I don't want to say emo, that's a weird term, but Chuck is very
emotive.
He's very upfront with his emotions. He's very in tune with how he feels.
Yeah, and maybe even more so now, as he's just doing some new turns in life. I think maybe that can be said even for a lot of people in general, just because of the pandemic, making us focus on what we're missing and what we love and who we love and who we've lost. We've lost a lot of people during this pandemic too, and I think there's been a lot of times where you're just it's the worst feeling, having that regret. Say, I wish I had told somebody how much I love them. I wish I had said this to so and so. But to find those times is not always the easiest, or to find the words is difficult, and sometimes you don't find them until it's too late. So, yeah, and again, like we've had some real downs and some real ups that you can't deny any of that. To as far as history and as far as our relationships go, it's all too much to let go, and yeah, we need to hold on to all that stuff. I love all the guys. I love Chuck like a brother. I love his family. It's so great seeing, we've also such a part of such big parts of each other's lives, beyond all the music. Like, we were on tour with Biff Naked. Chuck may not have told you this, but we were on tour with Biff Naked out west during his first son's first birthday. What a brutal feeling. I was kind of like, I wouldn't do that, straight up. But he did that for us. And I can still see him sitting and by himself in the dressing room. I still see that vision exactly. I see the bench. It was like a hockey kind of a arena or something. So it was that kind of a setup in the dressing room. See the wooden bench and everything. I see him sitting there, and I think he showed me a pic. Or somebody on the tour bought him a cake to celebrate his son's birthday, and it was a bit bittersweet. Not the flavor of the cake, just the moment.
The cake was delicious, but
cake was a hella good chocolate cake, but the moment was bittersweet, and I felt his pain. And I wasn't even a father yet. I hadn't even married my wife yet, I don't think. But that's that kind of stuff. Those moments are really hard for musicians of our type, new fathers, new parents. Especially if you're extra connected to that, and you're an extra emotional person. I think that's why Chuck and I have gotten so close and butted heads so many times, as we're emotional dudes. But that also, I think, contributes to our creativity and what allows we allow that to come through in our music. We've allowed that to come through in our writing. And I'm thankful that I was mature enough and ready enough for, I struggled a little bit with allowing other members of the band to write lyrics for songs, because, you got your part to do. We each write our own parts, and it's easiest for me to sing my own lyrics, easiest for me to remember my own lyrics. And all that kind of stuff, because I know how it's delivered. I know how it felt, and whatever. That's my contribution. But by big picture, I started to, bring in more of other guys' stuff. And a song like Circles is a good example. That Chuck wrote that one lyrically and everything.
That's the last song on the third album, Big Picture, or on Music Every Day. Isn't it the last song on one of the albums?
It's on Big Picture, but it is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 songs in.
Oh, near the end. Okay, my bad.
Yeah,
the memory failing a little.
Hey, dude, me too. I had to check it out. That's why it's over my shoulder here.
Yeah. Wait, what album is it?
Yeah. And he wrote that song about his grandmother, who was struggling with Alzheimer's, and she was about to or had just passed away. And she was a very pivotal role in raising him during a great period of his youth, and taught him a lot of stuff. And for someone to look up to somebody, especially a family member, with such admiration because of the knowledge they have, to then watch that, to grow up and watch them lose all of that and to sit in front of their house with them and they don't know where they are, kind of thing, is very emotional and traumatic, and it causes you to think of a lot of things. And that's what Circles is. And a lot of people who've been through that same situation have connected with that and thanked us for that. And I'm thankful that I, allowed Chuck to do that. And I'm thankful that he was open enough with me to be able to hand that over and let me sing his feelings, because that's a tough one to do as well too, from their perspective, I would imagine, as band members go. But yeah, that that's yeah, I love that guy.
I was wondering why Circles was sounding so familiar, and I think actually during my interview with him, he mentioned that that's the best song he's ever written, or his favorite song.
Oh shit!
I think he actually touches on it, that it was the hardest to write, or the best song he's done, or his favorite. Or so I guess you guys both have a deep connection to that song.
Yeah, it was I mean, not a big hit, but something that stuck out for us because of, I guess, like he said, and like I said, that the effort and the new paths we had to sort of travel to make that happen. Yeah, for that one in particular.
Speaking of big hits, songs that you did have all over the radio, Get Loose, The Roth Kung Fu. Was that the first time that you heard your own music on the radio? And if so, or if not, what was it like hearing your own music on the radio?
Yeah, that definitely would have been Get Loose for sure. Get Loose, a little bit of love for Who's That Cat for sure, because that video came out before Get Loose and got some rotation on Much Music because of our EP. And then we re-recorded it, a newer version for Full Day to Be. It was later on in the album, but the first single from Full Day to Be, was Get Loose, and that was obviously the first thing that really took off for us, because watching that kind of kick off from our home ground territory at 102.1 at the Edge, thanks to our brother Martin Streak, rest in peace, and guys like George Strombolopoulos, who was there as well at the same time, and also a good friend of ours. But really, Martin and brother Bill, who was working there too, and he went out west. They took that under their wing, and then every other rock radio station across the country started picking it up, and then licensing into Labatt's Blue commercials during the hockey playoffs. So it was like that annoying commercial that played 3 times a commercial break, and then even more because it became a bit of a battle between Labatt's and what we assumed was Molson. They're only two big competitors in the beer industry, because the only vocal that was left in from the song, the very tail line, "Come on, everybody, get loose tonight." Well, that's insinuating getting drunk and partying and intoxicated, and that is illegal as far as the alcohol industry goes. In more formal terms, Labatt's received lawsuit in that nature because of that. So that it's something they're used to. It's a pissing match back and forth between their competitors. So they pull the vocals and put a version out. Didn't change anything for us or even me. I don't care, whatever. I'm not on the commercial anymore. People know the song. My vocals aren't on there. People know the song and they know what it is. Like I said, it's being pounded into their heads 3 times a commercial break. Doesn't change anything really for us. And not all the stations, even though the new commercial version without my vocals has gone out to stations and radio stations and TV stations, not all of them are replacing that. It's not their responsibility. There's whatever, we'll do it if we can. So there's a mix of the commercial. It was kind of a fun game to play every time it came on. It's like, this is the one that has me on it or is it not? But that was a trip. And then I also have very fond memories. I think it was a trip hearing on the radio and having other people call me and be like, "I'm hearing the radio right now. Listen, I hear on the radio." That was a trip, but the one that really, really, really sticks out, I think, because of the moment and physically seeing people. Martin Streak used to DJ at the Phoenix and do a rock night there before he continued that over at the Sound Academy. It was massive Friday night live thing there that was live to air. The Phoenix would be packed to capacity every Friday night with college kids bouncing around to the latest hits on the Edge and then some. Him diving deeper into Martin's like love was like the Clash, and he would be deep into a lot of metal and punk stuff that they couldn't play on the radio or that they wouldn't play on the radio, but was still clearly, obviously massive at that time. You know what I mean? Like there's always tunes that you're like, why isn't this on the radio? Everybody loves this and there's bands selling concerts. He would be playing a lot of that stuff, or just having his ear to the ground. And again, being able to be somebody pivotal enough to bring a band like the Salads to the attention of these folks. So, and continued to be a supporter once we were on the station. I'll never forget going to one of those nights, him bringing us up to the loft and the DJ booth there. I remember crouching down, him like, we're gonna smoke a joint up here. I'm like, what? At that time, not cool. It was
bueno.
You could smoke inside, like cigarettes were being smoked inside clubs still at this time. So it wasn't like, the only cloud of smoke coming from the one spot, but we were the only people up on this balcony DJ booth thing up above everybody. I never forget him being like, look, I'm blaze a little bit of a shine on, having some drinks, and he's going to drop Get Loose. Watch this. Drops it. The crowd just went mental and losing their mind. And then he starts talking about how me and I was either with Chuck or Grant, but me and another guy in the Salads were up here and the people are freaking out and going mental. That one stuck out really hard because, I think the physical memory, the visual memory is still there. Seeing folks, that many people lose it, and I don't know that we had even performed to a crowd that was that familiar with that song at that time yet. I'm not sure, but for whatever reason, that one really sticks out. And from Martin was just like a really dear friend, a huge supporter of our band, singing praises nonstop, and to people that mattered, that eventually like, oh yeah, this band is cool. Oh, we can be the first one to play this or whatever. And everybody wanted to be the first one to play it. After that, just hearing and watching all of that unfold was a trip for sure, definitely. And being, nominated for Much Music Video Awards. And now we're going to the awards on the red carpet and
Casbahs and some other awards.
Yeah, lots of Casbah awards, shows, not receiving awards, but nominated and going to the shows and performing at them. Yeah, big memories. We performed at a Casbah Awards with a David Lee Roth impersonator, and the venue is big enough, people are far enough back to think that it actually was David Lee Roth, and that was the talk of the town afterwards. Did you see the Salads perform with David Lee Roth? What? They didn't. Where he looked like him. He's an impersonator, like right down to the full jumpsuit, tight white and red jumpsuit and long blonde hair, and brought his girlfriend out in a bikini, chugging from a Jack Daniels bottle. What the hell?
Oh, he went all the way.
Yeah. Oh, he's the real deal, and that's why we hired him and got him to sing Hot for Teacher with us, which was again just another fun, great big move, a moment in some shows that we've done in history, and it's super fun. I love all that stuff.
It's already been about a decade since the last Salads album. Is there any chance for a reunion, whether it's some live shows or new music? What do you think? Is there any hope left for us Salads fans listening to this episode?
Again, timing is everything for everything in life. And had you asked me that question 2 weeks ago, I would have had a very different answer. Because this past week that we just went through involved an old dear friend of ours. So see, first of all, let me back up a little bit. Salads as a family and crew, myself, Stratford, Chuck's in like the Prince Edward County area, but still the closest guy to me, although many hours away, still in Ontario. Libido is in Toronto. but Pfeiffer's in LA, Grant's out on the west coast of Canada, and Dave is sometimes in Ontario, but mostly in Florida. So really all over the place, and uh, that hasn't always seen it's a fine line to ride, I find, between being passionate about a project and the acceptance of it coming to an end. When do you be like, okay, it's done, instead of trying to keep pushing, keep talking about records, keep writing songs for it, keep thinking of what the next show is going to be, what the next move is going to be. That's a daily mindset that longtime musicians have to, or I found anyways, I had to shake my head out of it. Chuck would be a great great example of that, as he's transitioned into the world of real estate during this pandemic. He's had the biggest shakeup because he depended on touring solely, and that completely got cut from his life cold turkey. So it's a bit different for me, but again, to get back and answer your question, I would have said hell no 2 weeks ago. But in the last week, we've had an old dear friend who's a promoter that has booked a lot of really memorable, fun shows with us. Reach out and be like, is it possible for reunion? Because I got this and this and this, and this place will be really fun with this band. And we're all like, oh,
we're planting the seeds here, my friend.
So while I'm like, he's like, is it possible? While I'm like, I'm just one guy. I can't say yay or nay for anybody but myself. So I take that information here, guys, put it out there. What do you think? Is this crazy or is it not crazy? And everybody said, that sounds like fun. I'd be in. The next step is working schedules out and logistics of it all, which becomes a clusterfuck sometimes, or it can be simple. Like some of the best songs bands write. And I'm waiting for that moment for it to be simple, to come together, to show me that it was meant to be, to happen still. But we've taken the first step of everybody's in and would love to see each other again. Money's not an issue, while it is for travel, because we've got guys out of the country. Or the flights, some flights would need to be covered, and accommodations and so forth, to be realistic. But it's not out of the question. Recording new music to release, that seems a little bit more far-fetched. But again,
yeah,
stranger things have happened.
So you're saying there's a chance.
We're all so
it's
used
1
to
in
it.
a million. You're saying there's a chance.
What I in this transition for me of not playing shows with the Salads anymore, because that has been, I really struggle with that, because that is, our stage show for me has been, over the years, has been very therapeutic and very, it's like, that's I'm not a big like sporty guy and working out all the time kind of stuff, and that was like my mental and physical exercise was shows. So without that, I'm a little bit lost and looking for that outlet again. I can't wait to step on the stage with those guys. I'm a little bit scared in the sense of, being so excited I might hurt myself. But
I have to have a good stretch before you go
exactly. Lots of water, lots of stretch, good treads on the shoes, and know my space, because I'm gonna go mental. But yeah, I can see a show, maybe two. If one happens, be like, well, we should do the next day over here then too. But it will be when it feels right, when the show all totally makes sense, when we know the right people are going to be there.
Maybe some bigger festivals would be good, because they're usually well paying, which makes it worth your time.
Yeah. It was a few things we have in mind, and yeah, it feels more like it could happen. But what I'm also doing, again, what I've been focusing more on in this time is preserving our legacy as well too, so people don't forget. And we want, like, we've currently got Big Picture is not available on Spotify and on some other streaming sites.
Yeah, it's weird. It's on Apple Music, but not Spotify, right? The
Yeah,
4 albums are Apple Music. The 3 albums are Spotify.
yeah, we pulled it off. Chuck and I pulled it off
During the Neil Young debacle and Joe Rogan
no.
Oh, Neil Young copied you guys. I get it. I know
he would like to say so. No, just as a little bit of I think we were in the middle of kind of just realizing ownership again and going back to old contracts, and just, I don't want to say it was can we do this without anybody challenging us to find out if anybody cares anymore. Also, it was also more so of like, let's pull this so that we can clean it up. And it was never meant for streaming. Streaming didn't exist. It was meant for CDs and whatnot, let alone vinyl, if we wanted to do that in the future, which I would love to do. So where we're at now is making sure everything that has already been out is out on all streaming sites, clean them up for that purpose, while also cleaning up selective tracks for what I really want to do is release a greatest hits on vinyl. Finding the right people to help us do that, because for the last couple of years I've been talking about it and trying to coordinate that entirely on my own. And I'm struggling a little bit and need some help, so I'm starting to reach out to some friends that can help, and would love to work on that. And then when that comes together, I'm also, we get everything all up on streaming sites, and we also want to put together some B-side and live collections. It's all sorts of other stuff that we have already recorded that we'd love to put back out. I'd love to re-release all the albums with a few bonus tracks on each, because there were other tracks from those sessions that so some were even mixed and mastered, but just weren't even put together to the album or put out there at all. Just other singles and get all that stuff out there, and have a vinyl presence too, because there is no vinyl release of the Salads anything anywhere unless it's a bootleg. And I know some of those exist. I know one of those that exist, and it's not even in my collection. A local DJ that's a friend of mine made a 45 with Music Every Day on one side and Sunny Monday on the other, and then just played it at a party that we were at one day. I'm like, what the? I beeline to the other side. What are you doing? What is this? There's no label on this record. What'd you do? It's a little expensive. I surprised you. I was like, well, you motherfucker. I don't even have one of these.
You better at least give me a beer or something. That's funny.
I love that. I love it. I appreciate that, because that's not like copying a CD, putting these songs on CD or whatever. That's a costly venture. It's at least, a good $50 or more, kind of a one-off record for one person.
To wrap up about a possible reunion, they say that if the universe gives you a message in threes, you should pay attention. So the promoter brought it up about maybe doing a reunion. I've brought it up. I'm just saying, if someone else brings it up, that the universe is conspiring in your favor. That is,
I will flow with the power of the universe in all its ways. But like I've always said, I'm just one guy. I'm down, but there's a handful of other crucial pieces of this machine that have to be moving, that and can't be any other people, can't be any other way. It's got to be the 4 or 5 of us, Grant and Pfeiffer on the kit. It's funny. Like I said, we've never done that before, but we've talked about it a number of times. And then with this invite of this show, we've brought it up again, and as a fan, sort of removing myself from my own body, I've tried and wanted to do that so bad. And wish I could watch the band live beyond a TV screen or through a TV screen or lens or anything like that, actually visually get that experience. But I'm stoked. Like I said, I was a fan of the Salads before joining the band as well too. And I was a fan of Goldfinger before him joining our band. And now Pfeiffer and I, we slow dance on stage during Dave's guitar solos. We've spat fountains of water into each other's mouth from across the stage. and I'm excited to see him sitting on Grant's lap playing playing the drums. I'm excited to see the two of them playing on the same kit. I'm excited to see all that, expected and unexpected stuff from us on stage again. And most importantly, just excited to see my dudes and their families and get together. We've always said, after the last few shows, but it's been another difficult one to pull together. We've always wanted to do like a salads barbecue, family barbecue. If we're not doing shows, we've got to at least get together once a year with the families and at least see each other. It gets harder and harder as the years go by. Chuck and I are pretty good about it, and I see Grant once in a while, and Pfeiffer when he comes back into the country. But I haven't seen Dave since our last show, and I just missed the whole team. It would be awesome to see us all together again and see our families together. Not all of our kids have met. Some of them have, but that's all important to me too. I miss all that kind of shit. Seeing everybody catching up with their wives and stuff too.
It sounds like all the makings of a great reunion show, if ever it happens.
Yeah, we're trying.
We've been going for 2 hours and 20 plus minutes.
Oh shit! I lost track of time too.
No, it's all good. I got all the time in the world. I have enough questions. I'm enough of a fan that I did a super deep dive. I have enough questions to go for 5 hours. But are you okay if we do a just rapid fire, quick question, quick answer on a few things, and we'll wrap it up, because there's still some good stuff here that people
I'll try and keep it quick too. I'll keep my answers short.
That's all. Chatterbox. That's all good. If you could sit down for a conversation with anyone, living or dead, who would it be?
Wow. Immediately my brain goes to Bob Marley. Yeah.
Bob Marley. That's a good answer. Someone recently, I asked that question and they said, well, I would sit with someone living because it'd be awkward with someone dead. So I think they took it too literally, but
that's a morbid cat.
Yeah. What's the best live concert you've ever been to? The best band you've seen live?
Fishbone, hands down. Yeah, absolutely, hands down. And the best show I ever seen them perform was to one of the emptiest crowds. There was next to nobody there. I think it was just like the bands there. It just, for whatever reason, I thought it was a weekday on the tour or whatever. Key to Bala. We played Key to Bala with Fishbone and English Beat. English Beat headlining. Us playing before Fishbone. There's nobody there. Like nobody. They slayed. They played the best show of the tour. That's crazy.
Any plans for live shows in 2022 with the Reverbist, the Bob Marley cover, the Huey Lewis cover? Any plans, or do you have to wait for COVID to figure itself out?
No, the plans are floating up again now. Mob Barley gets pretty busy, usually around early February, and around Bob's birthday. We do celebrations around then, but tried to this year, weren't able to. So we're back. Other time is like usually April around 420. We do a lot of things then. We love to collaborate with a lot of other cannabis shops and companies around, and we've got a big one planned for Stratford with Green Seal Cannabis out of Stratford and Little Leaf, a cannabis shop in Stratford, just bringing some more of the community together and doing a big Bob tribute. A few sets from us there. Late April. Reverbists are still recording and building up the band. We'll definitely, I would say, I don't know about this year for live stuff. Maybe this year, definitely next year. Power of Huey, my Huey Lewis tribute that I sing with. We started that right as COVID hit, so we've only done a handful of things, mostly online. We did our very first parking lot show to a audience full of cars honking instead of clapping. The most surreal thing ever. But we've got another one booked for the summer, July, around East Gwillimbury, which is just the part of the GTA just outside of Toronto. It'll be an outdoor show in the midst of the summer, I do believe, if all goes down well. And you can find out about that through our Facebook page. That's where we're most active. The power of Huey Lewis tribute. It's a lot of fun, man. It's a crazy one because Huey.
I have a confession. I'm almost ashamed to say this, that prior to last night, the only Huey Lewis song I knew was Hip to Be Square.
No way.
I listened to the five most popular Huey Lewis songs on Spotify. I'd never heard of any of them except Hip to Be Square.
Have you seen
I'm
Back to the
ashamed.
Future?
I have.
So that movie, that main character, even Michael J. Fox's character, is a massive fan of Huey Lewis and the News. Huey is one of the judges at the talent show that he performs at. The song Back in Time was written for that movie. The lyrics are about the movie.
That's one of the five that I listened to. I had never heard that song. I'm so ashamed.
And The Power of Love was the big single on that soundtrack and for the movie, that when they approached Huey saying, the main character of this movie is a big Huey Lewis and the News fan, so can we get a song from you for the movie? He gave them Power of Love, but it was already a number one hit on Billboard before Back to the Future came out, so they had that to ride on to help boost the movie. What a huge way to market a movie. And then also I got him to add in Back in Time, which he wrote. Then he had already seen the film at this point and wrote the lyrics about the characters in the movie, and it's more based on that. But yeah, Back to the Future and Huey Lewis, big things. Yeah, cool. Man, Huey. It's funny. It's like, if you don't really know the history, Huey, a lot of people are like, Huey Lewis is a guilty pleasure type of a story because it's so big and in pop in the 80s, and a big pivotal guy during the rise of MTV and all that kind of stuff. But also, man, there's a lot of musicians that are big fans of his. I've seen a lot more stuff lately because he has stopped performing because he has Meniere's disease, which is he's losing his hearing, basically. Louder sounds just sound like distortion to him, so he can't hear and sing proper notes and such. You can have a conversation with him if it's at the right volume and so on, but he's not able to listen to music.
That's tough. I always think if you had to choose whether you were blind or deaf, which would it be? And it's tough. Part of me thinks I would rather be deaf, because I think it'd be hard not to see. Like, you wouldn't feel like a part of the,
Yeah.
So I feel like, even though music is my favorite thing, and I listen to probably 3 hours a day music, that I would probably choose to be deaf before blind. But I think about that a lot.
Yeah, I think I would too. Knowing, again, like just the getting around in life, you obviously need your sight, and you can feel music and vibrations and such too. I think that music can be felt as well as heard, so it's not completely gone. And listening to him talk about it now is interesting perspective too, because of the situation he's in. Yeah, it's wild. I not to drag on too long. I'll make this quick, but there's a documentary that I've told so many people about that always comes to mind when I'm talking about music and the connection of it to human brain. But there's a movie called Alive Inside.
Okay, stop.
Yes, you're the only person that's actually seen it or knows about it.
I released a podcast episode like 3 episodes ago that was just says watch Alive Inside. Like, I have a podcast episode just about that movie.
Good, so I can keep my story short. Yes. Nobody's seen this thing. I feel like I've told every,
and you can find the full movie free on YouTube. Like, on YouTube, it's just all there. It's like an hour and 18 minutes or something.
Watch it for people who are listening to this that don't know what we're talking about, or unless you've listened to Joel's other podcast or seen the actual film. In a nutshell, it's basically a guy who's showing the importance of music to our brains and our existence and our memory, and how the moral of it all is how our music memories are the last to leave our brain, no matter what is happening to our brain, really, even particularly with memory loss, diseases,
dementia, Alzheimer's.
Yeah, and to tap into that is life-changing. to say the
Yeah,
least.
my understanding is your memories are stored in one area of the brain. So when those diseases wipe out that area, there goes the memories. However, music is actually stored in multiple parts of the brain. So when a memory is associated with music, that memory gets stored in the multiple places that the music is stored. So when those diseases wipe out the one area of memory, the memory attached to music is still in the other areas. So everything's gone, but when they play music attached to those memories, they come back. They haven't lost all their memories. It's remarkable.
So amazing. But to physically see that effect on, a whole building full of people suffering from memory loss diseases at different ages, but predominantly elderly, more seniors, right? With history behind them and memories, most of which they think they've lost. To watch them tap into those again through listening to particular songs and curated playlists is one of the most powerful things I've ever seen in my entire life. That I just love that. I love that connection between music and our human makeup, how our brains work and our bodies, and it explains so much to me for around music and why it's such an important part of humanity and our lives, whether you acknowledge it or not. Whether you are a person who chooses to listen to music and puts on what you're listening to, or you turn on the radio when you sit in the car. It's huge. So huge.
Do you still have musical dreams that have not been accomplished yet, that you have, people have a bucket list or whatever? Are there still musical dreams that are in your heart that have not yet been accomplished that you would like to work towards, or you're still working towards?
I don't know. I not so much. Nothing that really stands out. Again, time wise, if you had asked me maybe a year or two ago, for the longest time, I've been set on. I'm like, I have to release a solo album at some point in my life. But I don't play any instruments. I've created and written and recorded a lot of stuff with a lot of other people that hasn't been released. I almost had a solo thing put out. That's a whole nother podcast worth talking about. That's just sort of been shelved. It might come out at some point. I might just one day wake up and give it away for free. But it was again timing. The timing was not right with it all, and it's a whole nother long story. But so I've always wanted that, and that was for the longest time something I need to do. But I've let go of that a little bit more in the last few years. It's not something I need to have happen. Maybe also because I've had more other friends connect to me and reconnect with me in such strong ways that has created something like the Reverbists, and my heart's really there with that a lot now. And that they actually, even when that started, Lonnie even mentioned to me, he's like, look, I guess before we named the band, it's like, looks like we might be forming a solo album for you. I'm like, this is crazy. I never talked to anybody about this. This is crazy.
Do you think having a young daughter has changed your goals as well? Like your outlook on life and your goals and what's important?
Absolutely. In a ton of ways, for sure. But also, but that's maybe also drawn me more towards the music, because I'm like, she's never seen the Salads perform live before. I've never had a chance to even take her to too many concerts because of the pandemic, and because of her age, all that kind of stuff. And I'm dying for all of that. Daughters definitely soften you up, and she's done that too. But like I said before too, I think she's she's got a bit more of the creative bug in her than my son does. And I wouldn't have spent my Christmas vacation deep into a big bucket of Lego if she wasn't around. And passionately too, I was right into it. I'm loving it. Just like this.
I was gonna say Lego is cool. I'm playing with dolls with my nieces, so you should be thankful for the Lego. I have a friend that's 38 that has all the big Lego sets. He's by himself playing with these Legos.
Oh, so. There you go. I know a cat like that too. and I get it. But yeah, she's right into it and right into the whole world and creating stuff. And I love that. The ice igloo is another perfect example. I may not have started that if she wasn't around, but yeah, no, just fantastic. Becoming a parent certainly changes perspective, and for musicians, a lot as far as touring goes, as far as your musical content, the musical direction, lyrical content, what you're talking about, because you're different. You know, I wrote a lot of the salad stuff when I was single. I was partying, I was doing shows. We were, being flashy. It's not so much me anymore. I party. I'm not single. We party differently. The party ends at 10 now instead of starting at 10.
You got to wake up in the morning. It's not the same.
Yeah. There's work in the morning. There's kids that get up way before me.
Do your kids think their dad is a rock star, or are you just some other schmuck in the house that's making them peanut butter sandwiches?
Yeah, I'm just some other schmuck. I think maybe my son has a little bit better, clear understanding of that because he's been to a bunch of salad shows before. He's seen that in action. He's seen me approached by fans at shows or just randomly when we've been out in the street before. He was old enough to do all that with me when we lived in Toronto together as well too before moving back to Stratford. So he's seen all that but I don't think he certainly doesn't think of me as what he compares me to everything else that's I mean, I'm not verified on Instagram. You know what I'm saying?
Well, so you were never really popular. That is what he's saying.
Yeah, that's it. But the fact that I have friends that I chat to on the regular, maybe makes me,
he has suspicions that you might be popular.
Yeah, exactly. Puts me somewhere a little bit higher than the average pedestrian.
I have 2 more questions for you. Can you handle 2 more?
Yeah, man. All good.
All right. When you look back on your life and your career, what are you most proud of, and what are you most grateful for?
I'm gonna say, aside from just salads and my relationships with all the guys and the relationships in other bands that we've built up in industry and all that stuff, those ones come through first and foremost. I'm so proud of being open enough and friendly enough to have made all of those connections. That at the same time, coming from a band and a scene that was super competitive and not always very friendly, and because we were the guys were teachers of what they played and such shredders, it got competitive, and I'm friends with people in some of those bands now that I wasn't then. So there are some of those moments too. While we were super all good, it was a bit too competitive at times. It got a little too much, but maybe that's what drove us as well too. Maybe that was a good thing to push everybody a little bit more. And now we can sit back and look at it and be a bit more mature about it. I am super proud of having being of the mindset with every show that we've ever done, to play it like it was our last, because I have no regrets because of that. Even on our last show that we did, I'm not like, oh, I wish I knew it was our last. No, I like every show, I treated it like it was our last. So I'm okay with that. Yeah, I wish we could have announced a last tour, a farewell tour, and booked dates in all of our favorite
and Hell
venues.
Freezes Over tour.
Yeah, I would have loved to have done that, and maybe we still can. But I don't have any regrets about it. I'm not holding on to it. It's not slowing me down from it. So I am thankful for all that and super proud that anytime I've ever stepped on a stage, I've left everything on the stage, and I've always gone in wholeheartedly full out. And I think most audience members can concur that you can visually, and you heard and saw that. So I'm proud of that, because like I said, I'm a fan of music. I still go to a lot of shows, and you still see people not fully giving it all, or they just sort of do what they got to do to get by on stage, and I'm I'm proud to not have ever had that mindset. Yeah, I don't know. Those are the main things that come to mind there.
Perfect. Perfect. Final question. Are you ready for this?
Yeah. Oh.
All right. Final question. If we could go back in time so that you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self, what advice would you give to cute little Darren Dumas at what did I say, 10 years old? With all the time since then, you've had, mentorship and experience and lessons and courses and failures and successes. What advice do you give this sweet, innocent, susceptible 10-year-old?
Wow. Well, I think of some of the main things that, as you become a parent, you start to think, what are the one-liners I'm going to drill into my kids that when I'm long gone, they're going to say, I remember my dad saying this over and over and over. And that the one main one is just treat people the way you want to be treated. Feel like adults the most forget that shit. Everybody forgets it at some point in time. Forget just adults. But if we could all do that simple thing, what a better world. I'd probably tell myself to not be afraid to talk to anybody, even if they feel like or appear like they're out of my league, and whatever the case may be. When the hormones start kicking in, don't be like, that girl's out of my league, I can't talk to her. Psh, she's just a human, she's just a person. And maybe nobody's talking to her because everybody's thinking that same thing. She's too fine, out of my league, I can't talk to her. Maybe she's that girl that ends up being like, why is nobody talking to me? I need to be a slut. No, she doesn't. The case is just something beyond her understanding. I'd tell myself that, because I think that people forget, a lot of people forget that and think someone's out of the league or something is too big to obtain. A thing, you know what I mean? Anything, a friendship or a level of success in whatever you want to do. I would tell myself to trust my gut always, because it's always right. If something's stirring up and doesn't feel quite right, there's a reason for that. Always trust it in any situation, just life in general. Your gut is your biggest voice. If you're just like, something's not quite right, but I really want to do something here. Something's not quite right for a reason. Listen to that, tap into that, trust it. It's there for a reason. And I'd probably say, similar to what to introducing yourself and meeting people and jumping and getting outside of your comfort zone, to that you won't get anything you don't ask for. The best things in life come from that, from asking things. A huge, Chuck would say this too, a huge pivotal part. He and I have talked about this a number of times as being, aside from our management, the two of us have sort of controlled most of the band side of the business,
the label and everything.
Yeah, exactly. And just communication with other business parties, be them promoters, bands, whatever, the interviews, all that kind of stuff. Big part of the change in the Salads business career was when we started asking for stuff. How many bands are out there that are like, nah, I can't play that venue I can't ask them for $1,000 or $2,000 to play that show. Just up and coming bands that are barely used to getting, let's say, $100, $200 to play the venue down the street. They're stoked about that. You first get that $200 to play a show. What? They paid us $200. Each guy gets $50 to take it. What? It's crazy. You'll stay there until you ask for more. Promise you. Unless you've got people on your team that are asking for you or rooting for you or see that value in you. Nobody else is going to see that value until you put it on. Until you be like, yeah, we'll play that show, $2,000. First time that Chuck did that, because he was the main guy booking for us before we had people. First time he did that and got it, and the promoter didn't bat an eyelash. He called me up and was like, "Go, guess what I just did?" Never guess. We're getting $2,000 for that show. It's like, what? How'd you do that? Really? I just asked for it. Like,
So he's a master manifester. Like he literally manifested everything good that's happened in his life, and he actually
because
mentioned
he went out there and did it because he
right.
tried, because it's
You
not because
you
he
have
sat
not
back and it
because you
came to
ask
him.
not is
Yeah.
the quote. You have not because you ask not. And
Yeah.
he mentioned that he would throw out the most ridiculous number. He'd be like, "Oh, it's $7,000 is what we need," and they're like, "Are you crazy? We'll give you 3,000." Or "Are you crazy? We'll give you 5,000." And it's like you were ready to play for 1,000, right? So
exactly. It's how you present yourself, and again, going back to talking to my 10-year-old self, I would do that. Don't underestimate yourself. Know your worth and put it out there to the world, because if you don't, they're going to set it for you, and don't let somebody else set your bar. You know what I mean? Do what you know you can do, and set your bar a little bit higher than that, even, because then you impress yourself as well too, and it's all icing on the cake from there, right?
I think that's great advice, and I think our listeners can actually learn from the advice that you would give your 10-year-old self.
Yeah,
so
we've
covered a ton of stuff. We're pushing 3 hours now.
Sorry.
Look, I'll do this all day. But no, we've covered a ton. But is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to share as we wrap up with our audience?
Let me see if I made any notes of stuff. What else? No, man, I think we got into a lot of stuff. I would say anything beyond that. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm happy. I love connecting with people. I feel like on a once or twice a week basis, I'm replying to YouTube comments from people commenting on Salad's videos just out of the blue, and I comment back, and they freak out for some reason because I replied back. But that seems to be the way of the world. Everybody's sort of connected. You can get it. You're no longer multiple people away. You're directly tapped into somebody. So I'm on Instagram at Mr. DD, MISTADD. Chuck and I both run the Salads Instagram account. You can reach us on there, both of us on there as well too, and that's just at the Salads. I'm on Facebook at Darren, Mr. D, Dumas. The Reverbist stuff, we're putting a lot of things up on Bandcamp now of our first couple singles, but still active mostly through Facebook. I try to everything else I just put through my own Instagram account. But the Reverbists is at thereverbists.com. We're putting all of our just sort of blogs and intentions and songs and things up there. For now, we're just sort of putting out some cover songs that sort of resonate with us, and putting our own spin on them to get people familiar with some songs they might know or something new, but ultimately with a spin with our sound and what we're putting out. We'd like to think it's a little bit original and missing, if that's possible in this wide, landscape of music. But with some folk and some blues, and then your dub kind of a reverb overtones on everything as well too, is just really creating this beautiful thing that we're loving. So stoked about sharing that more with people. And then as far as other music goes, one thing we didn't mention, I've not told many people about at all, really. This will be a surprise.
Breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news. There was one special guest on the Salads Full Day to Be album. His name is Skits. Skits
right?
is an MC out of the Scarborough area, I believe now, but Toronto, greater GTA. Unbelievable voice, amazing dude. He's been a friend of ours since then. He has since changed his persona to the name Ivason Black. It's IVASON Black. Still acknowledging that a lot of people still call him Skits. But he's running with the Iverson Black thing. He's got a ton of Iverson Black singles on Spotify, and a new one is going to come out, I'm told, sometime this spring, maybe March type of time or something like that, that features myself. It's a posse cut with like 5 other dudes. I end the track on a verse alongside my good friend Nigel, the lead guy in the Pocket Dwellers. Who are another band that grew up with the Salads, dear friends of ours. If we ever, reunite and talk about other bands that are friends of ours to share the bill, I guarantee you the Pocket Dwellers will be in the top 3. So, and he's tight with skits as well too. So that's a beautiful thing. And strangely enough, it's a hip hop track, deep, funky hip hop thing that Skits is well known for. Iverson Black is well known for. And it's got me back into that, man. This the few people that I've played the track for so far, like, damn, dude, I want to hear a whole album of you doing this kind of stuff. And you like were the highlight of the track. Which that shit's like really trips me out. I got the most unbelievable, heartfelt reply from Nigel. From the Pocket Toys. Again, my peers. Nigel grew up with like Chaos and a bunch of other amazing Canadian MCs, and is just a murderous MC himself. And to share the track with him, and for him to be like, "You stole the track, and you are still the man," and holy shit, I can't take it. My heart's gonna explode. But it's a really fun track, and I'm stoked for more people to hear it, because that's not really a direction that I'm going with too much these days. But it's still fully in me, and I still have a deep passion for writing hip hop verses, and that was a fun one. But yeah, that's gonna come out sometime in the next couple months. So keep your eyes peeled for Iverson Black. I don't even know what the song's called.
You heard it here first. Breaking news. I love it. So Darren, thank you so much for your time. Look, as I mentioned, I was a big fan growing up as a teenager, waited in line for your autograph and a picture. Yeah. So to I reached out. We had never talked before. This is the first time that we talk. So that means a lot. So thank you for being open to that. And thank you for being, transparent with everything, answering all the questions, not hiding anything in the last 3 hours. And I think there's a lot here for the Salads fans to digest, for your fans to digest. And it means a lot. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I hope so. And thank you so much for inviting me and asking me to be on this. Like I said, it was really a crazy moment, because I just been thinking about how I haven't done something so in depth in such a long time. And thanks to everybody who's still tuning in and listening to this entire damn thing. Listen to me gab for 3 hours. That in itself is an honor, and I'm flattered that you took your time to spend with us. And thank you again so much for reaching out. And thank you for being a fan. Thank you for coming to meet us at that Future Shop thing, man. It's all ingrained in our memories. And it's all a part of who we are, and I'm happy to be a part of this, and honored and flattered, and thank you, man. Yeah,
you're very welcome. To our listeners, just like he mentioned, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I'd love to hear from you guys. My goal is to grow this podcast organically, where you're giving me feedback on topics you'd like me to cover and guests you'd like me to interview. You can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel, and on Twitter at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.